one more time to the IT folks, please. This whole vibrating thing, I'm hoping you guys can get it to stop, because otherwise...
Okay, we're live, folks. Good morning. I'm Councillor Jennifer McKelvey. I'm Chair of the Infrastructure and Environment Committee. The clerk has confirmed that we have quorum, so I'd like to now call meeting 19 to order. Welcome, everyone, to the first meeting of 2021. Today's meeting is being held by video conference. City staff are also connecting to the meeting by video conference. As City Hall remains closed, the public will continue to participate electronically and can watch the meeting streaming live on YouTube at youtube.com/Toronto City Council Live. The clerk staff have connected all registered speakers to the meeting by audio. The list of speakers can be viewed online by visiting the Infrastructure and Environment Committee's page at toronto.ca/council and clicking the speakers box for today's meeting. I ask for everyone's patience if we experience any delays or technical problems during the meeting. The City Clerk has provided all agenda material on toronto.ca/council and on CMP, the Clerk's meeting portal. Clerk's IT staff will be available to you remotely if you need help with your devices. I would like to remind staff to keep their mics muted and their videos turned off unless they need to answer questions or speak to the committee. This will make it easier for me as chair and for those watching on YouTube to observe members as they participate and debate and vote on the items. Members, please keep your mic muted unless you wish to question staff or speak to an item, and ensure that your video is turned on. As part of each agenda item, I will ask members to raise their hand or unmute their mic if they wish to question staff or speak. I will then create a speakers list and will call on members when it's their turn to speak. When voting on an item or a motion, I ask that members ensure that they keep their video on and raise their hand to indicate their vote. Members, I want to remind you that you must still submit and approve your motions by email. Staff are available at iec@toronto.ca to help with motions. If there are any visiting members of council attending today, I encourage you to turn on your video so that I know you are present and can give you the opportunity to ask questions of staff or speak. This will also assist the clerk staff to record attendance for the meeting. Although we are in different locations and meeting remotely today, the committee would like to acknowledge that the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? If you have an interest, please raise your hand, unmute your mic. Seeing none, we will proceed with the confirmation of the minutes. Can I have somebody move the minutes from our last meeting? Councillor Pasternak, all those in favor? Any opposed? The item carries. Members, our first item of business today is election of the Vice Chair of the Infrastructure and Environment Committee. Are there any nominations for Vice Chair? I'm prepared to nominate Councillor Pasternak today. Are there any additional nominations? That was the second call. I'm calling for a third and final time for nominations. Great. Hearing no further nominations, I declare that nominations are now closed, and Councillor Pasternak has agreed to remain as Vice Chair, and I am super delighted as he has been an exceptional mentor and friend to me. Hearing no... and after we welcome Councillor Pasternak... Oh, we need to vote on it, right? Oh, we need to vote on it. Because we don't have... Okay, great. We don't have to vote on it. It would have been unanimous anyway. All right. So that carries us now to the... agenda. We have 11 items plus one item to add to the agenda, and we have 54 public speakers that have been registered.
Madam Chair.
Yep.
On a procedural motion, I'm happy to move because there are so many deputants on number 11 that we reduce the speaking time to 3 minutes per deputy.
And we have already prepared that motion. I was just seeing if we should do it before or after the run of the agenda, but the clerk has advised we can do it now, so he can pull it up for you, Deputy Mayor, if you'd like to move it.
Consider it moved.
Great, he's just going to pull it up.
What is that? That doesn't look like... That looked a little bit too complicated. I just wanted 3 minutes, that's all.
He's pulling it up. Okay, here we go, Councillor. Sorry, Deputy Mayor, would you like to read that one out?
Sure, that speakers who have not pre-registered be allowed to register to speak until 10 a.m., after which registration will be closed. The length of the presentation is limited to 3 minutes. The question of speakers by members of council, including members of the Infrastructure and Environment Committee, be limited to 3 minutes with 1 round of questions per member.
Okay, great.
All those in favor?
Well, thank you. All those in favor? All those opposed? That item carries. That brings us to the agenda, item
Madam
19.
Speaker, to the chair.
Yes?
Chair, I would just like to be the record to reflect I was recorded in the negative on that particular.
Okay, great. So we'll do a recorded vote then. All those in favor?
In favor, Councillor Pasternak, Deputy Mayor Manan Wong, Councillor Perruzza, Councillor Cole. Any opposed? Oh, sorry, and Councillor, Chair McKelvey. Any opposed? Councillor Leighton. That is, Madam Chair, it's 5 to 1. The motion carries.
Okay, now that we've covered all the procedural basis, we'll move to the agenda. Item IE 19.2, award of contract number 19 ECS MI 01 NT for the process of electrical condition assessment project upgrades at the North Toronto Treatment Plant, an amendment to purchase order number 6051147 for services during construction. Anybody like to hold this item? Anybody like to pass, to move staff recommendations? Councillor Pasternak? All those in favor? Any opposed? That item carries. Item 19.3, award of request for proposal number doc 2248482116, CHM Hill Canada Limited for professional services for detailed design, contract administration, and post-construction services for the secondary treatment system upgrades at the Ashbridges Bay Treatment Plant. Anybody like to hold this item? Would somebody like to pass staff recommendations?
I'll move staff.
Okay, Councillor Pasternak, all those in favor? Let's try this again. All those in favor? All those opposed? That item carries. Item IE 19.4, award of contract number 20 ECS MI 01TW for zebra control system in lake current monitoring upgrades at the RL Clark FJ Horgan water treatment plants. Anybody like to hold this item? Is that a hold or is that moving staff recs, Councillor Leighton? Staff recs? Okay, all those in favor? All those opposed? Item carries. IE 19.5, award of contract number RFP 20 ECS TI 01LR to RV Anderson Associates Limited for professional engineering services for local roads roads resurfacing program. Anybody like to hold this item? Move staff recommendations. Councillor Pasternak, all those in favor? All those in favor? All those opposed? That item carries. IE 19.7, extended producer responsibility. IE 19.6, non-competitive bridge contract with Parsons Inc. for provision of RESCU Transportation Operations Center operation services. Anyone like to hold this item? Somebody like to move it? Councillor Leighton, all those in favor? All those opposed? Item carries. IE 19.7, extended producer responsibility transition update curbside collection strategy. Anybody like to hold this item?
I'd like to hold the item, please. Might I make the suggestion, though, because it's an in-camera item and my questions are of an in-camera nature, that we proceed to the other items and deal with this item at the end of the meeting?
Yep, that sounds good. IE 19.8, amendment to the 2004 management agreement with the Toronto Botanical Garden. Anybody like to hold this item? Somebody like to move staff recommendations? Councillor Pasternak, all those in favor? All those in favor of Botanical Gardens? All those opposed? Item carries. Item IE 19.9, completion of the 6 points interchange reconfiguration traffic regulations amendments. I do have a technical amendment from staff, but did anybody like to hold this item? Okay, we can bring that up. It's just a correction of some of the names. So the first one is changing from road to drive, and the second one is replacing an avenue with a drive, and the third one is changing a 27 to a 427. All those in favor of the amendment? Just waiting until we change screens. All those in favor of the amendment? All those in favor of the item? Carries. IE 19.10, I know that Councillor Fletcher has questions. There is also a technical motion from staff, so we'll hold this item. In my name, item 19.11, Young Tomorrow, we have 54 deputants. I will hold this item. Item 19.12, Active TO and Accessibility. Would anybody like to hold this item?
Yes, Denzelman and Wong.
Okay. And then we have one introduction of a new item. Councillor Fletcher has prepared a letter that she submitted. We'll introduce the item. Okay. Okay, we'll vote to introduce the item, but then we can hold it so that everyone can look at the motions.
What's the subject?
Storage facilities for kayaks and canoes. Okay, we'll vote on introduction of the item. I'm just waiting for the screen to change back. Okay, all those in favor of introducing the item? Okay, that's introduced to the agenda, and that now brings the Young Tomorrow. Okay, thank you. So that brings us to Young Tomorrow. We have asked staff to give a short presentation. Is Barbara Gray on the line?
Sorry, Chair, can I just interrupt? What about 19.10? Is that not going ahead of that? The questions on...
We've held that for you.
Authority? Yes.
Yeah, it's held for you.
That would come after, our questions would come after the Young Street?
That's right. Is your question short? Would you like, if the committee wills it, we can, sorry?
I believe it could be a pretty quick item unless your Young Tomorrow is timed. Then I would suggest following the agenda. The first one up would be 19.10. I don't have a lot of questions, but I do have some.
I think she's right. We have to go by 1, 2, 3, 4. We have to go numerically. So 10 comes before 11.
Okay, that's fine, with the exception of we've decided to do 19.7 at the end so we can go on camera. So if that's the will of the committee, we can do 19.10 first. So that would be questions to staff. And Councillor Fletcher, as a visiting member, would you like to go first?
Yes, yes, I would. Just one question. I noticed that this is a fair amount of road delegated authority that you're asking for many different projects. And for the Ontario line, particularly the section of it that is currently above ground, even though the city's asked for an alternative, there are 6 bridges there. and many of them over 100 years old. And there is to be a report, a staff report come forward that indicates the impact of the construction on the bridges, on the roads, and on transit with that amount of above ground construction. When are we getting that report, please? That was asked for about a year ago.
Is there staff available to answer the question for Councillor Fletcher?
Could you hold my time, please, Chair? It's
Absolutely.
evaporating. It's evaporating.
So, Chair, good morning. This is Ashley Curtis. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, I can. I can see you.
Hi, good morning, Councillor.
Good morning.
I'm going to need Derek to be able to answer that question for you because I believe Derek's preparing that report. So I'm just trying to get hold of him. He's not on the line at the moment, I don't think, but he is on our chat behind the scenes. So I'm just trying to get him on the line.
Okay.
As am I, Madam Chair.
Are there any additional questions, or does anybody else have questions for anybody that is here?
I'll have another question, and maybe Councillor Cole would know a little bit more about this, but one of the suggestions that came from one of the BIAs that that's the Eglinton Way, which is very experienced in road closures. They had indicated that everything that you need to have should go in the contracts that Metrolinx lets with these contractors. And I'm wondering what the possibilities are here to include many prescriptive requirements in any contracts about road closures and what the requirements of the contractor would be. Those are my two questions. So I don't know how easy they are to answer, Chair, or
So
if we need to put this at
We're-
the end now.
Is
So
somebody
that we
available
can
now to answer
get
Councillor
pulled
Fletcher's
together.
questions?
So through the chair, it's Ashley again. Councillor Fletcher, good morning.
Good morning.
So in terms of elements to be included in Metrolinx's contracts, yes, the Transit Expansion Office is and it does have input into what gets included in the Metrolinx contracts. In terms of these permits and the closures of lanes and sections of road, through the permit process, we do attach conditions to those permits. So that's the most appropriate way to ensure the city's interests are safeguarded when it comes to specific elements around road closures or lane closures.
I don't know if we have Mr. Toigo on the line yet, but according to just how the streets are treated by the contractor, leaving stuff out, leaving a big mess, that was indicated by the BIA that they have no control over that unless that is prescribed in the actual contract. And I'm hoping that at some point, Councillor Cole can let us know more about if that's a good idea or not. But is that possible to be extremely prescriptive and require that? Because if you take this away from me and community council, I cannot make that motion that contracts must include XXXX. I would assume that staff could do that if directed.
So through the chair, absolutely, councillor, we can include that as a standard condition as part of our road permits.
The condition would be the contractor, Metrolinx, in selecting a contractor, has to have very prescribed language about the requirements that they must live up to in order to get the contract.
Through the chair, the condition would relate to each individual permit as Metrolinx and the contractor came in to try and secure that particular lane closure or that particular road closure. So we could apply a standard condition which obligates them as a condition of having that permit to keep that area tidy. So that isn't something we currently have as a standard condition, but it's certainly something that we can do as part of this.
Okay, thank you. Maybe Mr. Toigle's there, Madam Chair, that could answer that question about the report and the amount of infrastructure that exists in that 1 kilometer zone of parks, of 6 bridges, of 2 transit lines, and what the impact is going to be in giving permits before we actually have any understanding of the complete impact of that above ground section.
Through you, Madam Chair, we are trying to get Derek connected. I'm not sure what the challenge is. We could be happy to get back to you with the timing on that report, Councillor Fletcher, at a later point. Today, we will get back to you if you like.
Yeah, the Chair, can I just suggest, and I'm sorry, I thought this would be a quick item, but it's not. And because Mr. Toigo can't get on the line. So I will suggest then, if it's okay with you, that go ahead with the Young Street, and then we'll come back if he's available. I'll stay somehow connected when that's over, unless I'm in another meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. We can certainly hold down this item until we have him on the line. I also want to point out to the committee that there is a technical amendment from staff that has been posted on a CMP, so you can have a look at that one as well. Councillor Cole, you had a question?
Yes, I think, Madam Chair, Councillor Fletcher raises a very important point, because as you're putting down the parameters for massive infrastructure projects that are going to affect so many neighborhoods, and the delegation of authority here, it is very important, I think, what Councillor Fletcher suggested, is that there be a framework within the agreement with Metrolinx, or within the contracts that Metrolinx does engage in, whereby there are ways of protecting the affected neighborhoods.
Councillor Cole, was this, we're going to hold down the item for further discussion. Was this just a clarification of something needed right now?
Okay.
Okay, so we'll have a fulsome discussion of this, and we will work to have Derek Toigo on the line. So that will bring us back to item 1911, Young Tomorrow, municipal class environmental assessment on Young Street. We have 54 deputants. Before that, Barbara Gray was going to give a short presentation.
Hi, good morning, Chair McKelvey and councillors. Jacqueline Hayward is actually going to run through a very brief presentation just to get people comfortable and understanding where we are with the recommendation for this program.
Hi, good morning, Infrastructure and Environment Committee members and those of you who are participating in the meeting remotely. I'm going to give a very brief presentation to clarify the Young Tomorrow Environmental Assessment Study recommendations that are before you. Overall, this project is about designing the future of downtown Yonge between College and Queen Street. Young Tomorrow is about creating a walkable, economically vibrant, and flexible street which will improve the pedestrian experience. The study drivers that bring this report forward at this time are that state of good repair work is required in this section of Yonge Street. The water main beneath the street is one of the oldest in the city. We are looking, as I said, to improve the pedestrian experience for the majority of people who get around on Yonge Street by walking. Safety for vulnerable road users, and the Vision Zero Road Safety Action Plan is an important component here. The volumes of pedestrians prior to the pandemic were at the point where even the existing sidewalk widths could often not contain them. So in terms of providing separate space for pedestrians away from motor vehicle traffic, this is an important objective for us. Equity through better transportation choices and experiences for all, and overall city policy and the official plan guidance for Yonge Street as it came through the TO Core secondary plan. The objectives are very broad in terms of mobility, focusing on supporting pedestrian movement, cycling, transit, and driving access for deliveries and access through the street as well. Livability, as I mentioned, pedestrian experience being of a primary importance, And we know that this street is critical for events, parades, and festivals that the city takes on. In public safety, as I mentioned as well. In terms of prosperity, we recognize that retail and tourism is a primary element of the way that the street functions. We also evaluated the cost effectiveness and of various options, as well as the way that they would support curbside activity needs for the businesses and other adjacent uses. Looking forward, in terms of long-term planning, since this would be a reconstruction of the street, we want to make sure that it supports sustainability in all its facets in terms of the natural environment, flexibility, innovation, and personal health and well-being. The study area is focused, as I said, between College and Yonge Street within a wider study area of the downtown north of Davenport to King Street. This is the first phase of an environmental assessment between College and Queen, whereas a next stage will look to the potential future design of College up to north of Bloor. Mode share was a critical component here. We see the majority of people using Yonge Street are pedestrians, and that trend has been increasing, as well as the influence of cycling and transit use in the downtown core. What we are recommending here today is a physical design of Yonge Street, an environmental assessment recommendation of a 2-lane roadway, 6.6 meters wide, with mountable curbs and unit pavers. This would widen the furnishing, planting, and cafe zone and widen the pedestrian clearway. There is also a recommendation for a cycle track for the component between College and Gerrard, where the street is 6 meters of right-of-way wider than otherwise the rest of the section between Gerrard and Queen. The physical design does not lock in a particular operations approach, but is intended to be flexible so that we can consult with local stakeholders, including the BIA and other local agencies and adjacent users, to understand the best operations approach for various iterations going forward. The next steps are we are recommending that this physical design be approved by Infrastructure and Environment Committee and completion of the environmental assessment study for 30-day public review. Over the next 2 years, we would look to do detailed design and operations planning in consultation with local area stakeholders and bring forward a report to council on a proposed operational plan before construction in potentially 2023. Construction process period would not start until sometime between 2023 and 2025 and would take about 2 years. So that summarizes the overall background of what you have before you today.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. We're now going to move to the deputants, and then we'll come back to questions of staff. Our first deputant is Kevinrupa Singh.
Good morning. Are you able to hear me okay?
Yes, Kevin, you have 3 minutes, and I am going to be very diligent at pointing out 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, members of the Infrastructure Committee. Happy New Year to you all. And congratulations, Chair and Vice Chair, on roles. My name is Kevinrupa Singh, and I'm speaking today on behalf of Cycle Toronto, a member-based nonprofit organization that's working to make Toronto a safer, healthier, more vibrant city for all. I've had the pleasure of working with many stakeholders and City of Toronto staff for several years during the consultation process for Yonge Tomorrow, which is a big, bold vision for downtown Yonge Street. Transportation services, they've done of creating a consultation process in which stakeholders and the public have both been able to contribute to a great deal of feedback that staff have collected. We've been very impressed by their ability to listen to a variety of needs and iterate again and again on their designs to reach a recommendation for a new physical layout that's before you today to be voted on. The physical change to this section of Yonge Street proposes reallocating 2 of the car lanes to be dedicated to active transportation and placemaking. This is great. I think we've seen how prioritizing space for active transportation has benefited the safety of all road users and visitors on our main streets before. The original Bloor Street bike lanes are a great example of where of how successful we can be in improving the road safety for people walking, people cycling, and people driving all at the same time. Destination Danforth is another great example of a project that's prioritized active transportation, and it's been lauded by the local community. We've also been prioritizing public space that supports our local business across the city with the highly successful Cafe TO program, and that's been incredibly well received by residents and businesses alike. In fact, just last month, you may recall, Mayor Tory was pleased to share with you all at Council how happy he was to have won his bet against a Danforth community leader about whether a destination Danforth would be a benefit to local businesses. Of course, the community leader was nervous, but it turns out it was better than ever, and Mayor Tory was quite pleased about that. The staff recommendations that are before you for Young Tomorrow are an embodiment of the exact principles of what we've been doing on streets like Bloor and Danforth and across the city with programs like Cafe TO. Let's also not forget that this project lines up very well with the Recovery and Rebuild report that was endorsed by Council very recently to highlight the need of investing in public space and active transportation to support the economic and social recovery of our city as we come out of the pandemic. This project will set up not only the local community, but the region at large for success in the coming years. Cycle Toronto really supports the recommendations that are laid out by staff. We're quite confident that any further work to determine an operational plan can be carried out by the city in the coming years after this vote today. And we're also confident that it'll be at the same caliber as the consultation that was done leading up to the recommendations that are here today. So I trust that you'll be voting in favor for these changes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. 3 minutes, 3 seconds. Appreciated. Any questions of the deputant? Okay. Seeing none. Thank you, Kevin. Our next speaker is Eli Eren.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can, Eli. You have 3 minutes.
Great, thank you. I'm representing the Toronto Youth Cabinet. We strongly support the proposed design for downtown Yonge Street. I've served on the Young Tomorrow Stakeholder Advisory Committee for the past 3 years. At each stage of the process, reviewing in detail and commenting on the proposed design options. In 2019, the Young Tomorrow team presented at one of our youth cabinet meetings. Between the stakeholder meetings, community meetings, and online engagement, there has been extensive consultation for this project. The current design of the subject section of Yonge Street does not work. It hasn't changed in 100 years and is antiquated. The upcoming water main construction is an opportunity to set a new vision for Yonge Street. While the majority of people travel in the area by walking, cycling, or taking public transit, the majority of Yonge Street is reserved for cars. The sidewalks are crammed full of people while the roadway remains underutilized. Toronto's youth cycle, walk, or take transit for almost 90% of trips with destinations in the downtown area. The proposed design will greatly increase the amount of space available to pedestrians while maintaining access for deliveries and to adjacent parking garages. Allocating more space to pedestrians will reduce congestion on the sidewalks, especially near Yonge and Dundas, and make walking on Yonge Street a much more enjoyable experience. The design acknowledges that this section of downtown Yonge is unique, with its extreme pedestrian volumes exceeding 100,000 per day. The area includes 3 busy subway stations, Ryerson University, a number of office buildings, high-rise residential buildings, and the Eaton Center. This project marks a major step towards designing streets for the people who use them rather than prioritizing cars by default. The proposed design also aligns with the city's Vision Zero Road Safety Plan and Transform TO Climate Change Plan. As the number of condominium and office buildings increases and Ryerson University continues to grow, the congestion on the sidewalks will only worsen. We need to take advantage of this opportunity to make Yonge Street more than a thoroughfare. We can make Yonge Street a destination. It is time to rebalance Toronto's most important main street to put people first. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the deputant? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Eli. I believe the next set of speakers have not called in on the line, so we are going to check them. Perry Llewell. Okay. Perry Llewell. The next one was Samuel Coleman. Brandon Sage. Corin Leung. Joe Bala. Celicia Karim Pico. Patrick Duriu. Christina Hung. Okay, we believe the next speaker is on the line. Arthur Klimowitz. Arthur, you'll need to connect to your microphone. We believe Arthur's on the line, but we're having problems connecting him. We'll move to the next speaker and come back to Arthur. Philip Poplik. Derek Yarlett. Maria Meister. Paul Seaman.
Good morning, Chair McKelvey. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you. Thank you. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Talk about getting bumped to the front of the line. Wow. I'm Paul Seaman. I'm Vice President of Brandon Cities. I'm speaking to you today to voice our opposition to the staff recommendations and proposed design concept for Yonge Street, as we believe it will negatively impact the community that we and many others have worked diligently and for over 20 years to create. Brandon Cities and its predecessor Clear Channel pioneered the initial Dundas Square signage district through the creation of Canada's first media tower, Atrium on Bay. This was soon followed by similar spectacular media displays by Cadillac Fairview, Bentall Kennedy, Rogers, the former Hard Rock Cafe, and even young Dundas Square itself. Collectively, these displays that were made possible by ad revenue created through traffic, vehicular, and pedestrian were key in making downtown Yonge and Dundas Square world famous and respected, not dissimilar to Times Square and Piccadilly Circus in London. These displays generate positive tourist experiences and create iconic imagery from what was once a diminished, crime-ridden national eyesore. Any proposed street redesign that reduces critical vehicular access, including tourist coach lines, visitors, and overall traffic counts, will negatively impact the economic benefits and viability generated by these displays and hinder their ability to provide services, capital maintenance, repair and development, and potentially hinder contributions to important community charitable events such as Toronto Arts and Luminato. The city should not remove vehicular access on Yonge Street. We believe that the staff recommendations before you today would not contribute to the world-class destination that Yonge Dundas is currently, but rather would significantly diminish it. For these reasons, we voice our opposition to the plan as currently presented and urge the committee to reject staff's recommendations for Yonge Street. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the deputant? Councillor Leighton, 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you very much.
We have Councillor Wong Tam joining us. Do you mind if we have her ask questions first, Councillor Leighton? Sorry.
Please, no, please.
And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Councillor McKelvey, and thank you to Councillor Leighton for the opportunity. And through you to Madam Chair, to the Speaker. Paul, Mr. Seaman, I should say, your business the business that you own and the business that you operate is largely the digital billboard signage sector. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And is it your opinion today that the fewer cars and drivers on the roadway would diminish your revenues? Is that what I heard? Or can you please clarify?
I think that is fundamentally correct in that any diminishment of traffic and transportation, whether vehicular, pedestrian, or otherwise, would all have a negative impact to reduce the overall visibility and traffic count of the community.
Is it the purpose and the design of the billboards, the digital billboards, to attract the attention of motorists and drivers, or is it just persons on the street, whether they are a pedestrian or a driver? Because you singled out the driver as a deterrent for revenues. Can you explain that?
Well, it's fundamentally an aggregate of the total traffic that's involved in the area, but it's also the perception of the area. That is, there's always movement in the area, whether it's pedestrian or vehicular. I can tell you, with the privilege of having an office that overlooks it, there are more often than not days that the community is empty. Especially with COVID, there's very few pedestrians in Dundas Square today. Certainly in winter months, we see much, much less pedestrian activity. So in order to maintain any kind of vibrancy, all movement is good, whether it's a bus, or not. I think to your question, certainly we're not suggesting that this should be a visual distraction. Cars should not follow the road and pay attention and look at the signs, but rather the mere presence of those cars, and not to negate the fact that the average car has more than one individual. There are passengers in it that do benefit from the experience.
So is it the purpose and the design of the billboards, just because I'm a little bit confused by the answer, but is the purpose and design of the billboards to attract the visual attention of drivers and the passengers in the cars, and that creates the dynamic kinetic energy on Yonge Street that makes it vibrant? Is that what you're expressing? Is that what you're saying to council today?
No, thank you, Councillor. I believe I did answer it by saying it is the overall aggregate of traffic in the community, including passengers and cars. No, the position of billboards is not specifically to take the attention of drivers away from the responsibility to operate a motor vehicle.
Okay, thank you. I thought I heard something different, but thank you for clarifying.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Leighton, did you have questions? 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you very much. You raised the issue of Times Square that came up, and I'm not particularly familiar with the billboard industry, but what portion of the revenue do those companies in New York attribute to vehicular traffic as opposed to pedestrian traffic for those billboards? Is there a calculation?
No, it's an aggregate. Yeah, it's an aggregate total count, which is both pedestrian and vehicular. One of the there are some key differences in Times Square and Dundas Square. Dundas Square very much being a square with an intersection and traffic coming from all different directions, and Times Square has more of a peripheral transportation that kind of bullnoses in. The other thing that I think is exceptionally different about Times Square is it has considerable international coverage. That is, around the world, you can watch New Year's Eve live in Times Square. Many of the broadcast companies broadcast from Times Square. We don't have that in Dundas Square, so we're more reliant on the day-to-day existing traffic that we do have today.
Now, the city's data demonstrates that there's a pretty significant shift towards more pedestrians along most stretches of Yonge Street, and that's only going to continue with further redevelopment. Is that not factored into your assessment that this will actually decrease the amount of revenue that you're bringing in?
Well, I think we would really need to consider when that occurs and how that occurs. So as example, currently you have a constant stream of motion. You have vehicles, and yes, you do have people, you have bus lines that empty people out in Dundas Square and tourism and things like that. There's a general movement that suggests vibrancy in the square. When you take the traffic out of it, you're left with pockets of pedestrians. There's no questions that there are times that there are lots of pedestrians, and we are very supportive of occasional closures whereby there are festivals and events. We encourage that. We think that's a great idea. But suffice to say, that pedestrian movement tends to be more limited. You know, you may have more of that at 6 or 7 o'clock on a Friday night, and nothing on, you know, on a Friday morning where you just have no traffic at all, or potentially Sunday morning. So it really changes the nature of the district to have these sort of individual focused periods of time when people go out versus when they don't go out.
Okay, thank you.
I have questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Leighton. Deputy Mayor, floor is yours.
Yes. Thanks. Interesting deputation, Madam Chair, to the extent that from a business point of view, he might have some interesting statistics that might shed some light on this. So, sir, you raise an interesting point about numbers and traffic volumes. You say that there can be some pretty dramatic shifts depending upon time of day, yes?
Yes.
And that's not really considered in the report, is it?
Not at all.
Not at all.
No, we see a large number of pedestrians, and we see projections of what is assumed, but we have no, you know, statistical evidence to say in 2 years what the, you know, what that number, you know, may or may not be. I would ask, you know, it's easy to forget history, but for those of you that have been around long enough, you may remember Dundas Square before the signage, before we built Atrium Bay, and it was you know, there were lots of people walking around, but it was a pretty scary community to be in. So we certainly don't want to do anything to cause a regression.
Right.
And we certainly don't want to create an area that might be considered, especially by tourists, as an undesirable area to go to.
And I mean, you're kind of an agnostic with regard to, you're interested in eyeballs looking at your advertising, which translates into business for your clients. So whether it's in a car or on a sidewalk, that person, you know, has a wallet, and you hope they'll open their wallet. That's sort of your business arrangement. So, you know, you're looking at this saying, as a business person, from an economic point of view, this arrangement will be negative for business. Have I missed that? Have I got that fairly right?
No, Councillor, I think that is an accurate depiction. That is, it's, you know, yes, of course, it's eyeballs anywhere and anyhow, but it's also the perception of what the community is. And that is, you know, for the ad agencies and those advertisers whose businesses, you know, are dependent on this kind of thing, it's important that they be getting a vibrant community and not one where, you know, some pockets here and there have traffic, and the rest of the week it's pretty quiet and slow. That will diminish the interest in the business. Ultimately, if we're not able to maintain these things and continue capitalizing, which is an expensive business, they will, you know, slide away in the years to come, and we'll be back where we were, you know, 22 years ago.
So this will take away from the excitement of that area.
That's the time for questions.
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any additional questions of the deputant? Seeing none, we'll move to our next deputant, Alan Liu.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me?
We can. You have 3 minutes.
Excellent. Good morning, Madam Chair and committee members and councillors. Thank you for providing me with the opportunity to share some of my experiences with the neighborhood. Once again, my name is Alan Liu, and my family has owned and operated Salad King neighborhood Thai restaurant, serving the Young Dundas community for 30 years. I grew up in this neighborhood, I work in this neighborhood, and I even live in this neighborhood. So every day I'm biking, walking, taking the transit. This is my day-to-day life. When the building that housed our original restaurant for 20 years collapsed back in 2010, my family had a decision to make whether we would continue to invest in the neighborhood or, you know, look at other opportunities. And because of all the community, we decided to reinvest and open in the restaurant, open in the area again. This to say we are committed to this neighborhood and want nothing but the best for the community. But we are greatly concerned by the proposal being put forward for the neighborhood that includes daily closing for the pedestrian priority zones. We don't believe this will be good for the areas, and I'll share 2 points of why I think that. The first point is $500,000. I've done the business analysis, and this is a conservative estimate for how much additional revenue I would need to bring in, indexed to today's dollars, to be able to offset the operating costs for the proposed pedestrian zones. And this cost includes hiring additional staff to receive goods well earlier than normal operating hours of restaurants and retail business, the cost to attract premium suppliers who would be willing to meet the complex delivery requirements. And that $500,000, that's not just for a restaurant like Salad King. That would be for every single business that has to face the same challenges, whether it's a small cafe, whether it's a big store, because we need the same labor, we have the same complexity. So while a pedestrian zone may draw additional businesses under certain conditions, I don't think it will actually be enough for us to offset those costs throughout the year. Operating a restaurant downtown is already extremely challenging with the high rent and property taxes. That an area-specific cost like this would drive businesses out of the area and make it unviable. And this brings me to my second point. We would only be able to incur these costs if we could even bring supplies downtown. Even today, if I had to get a plumber, the first thing I hear is, oh, it's downtown, I don't want to go down there. So imagine we have all these closures. We work with a lot of small businesses, a lot of small suppliers, and they just don't have the logistics and their staff to be able to deliver at 5 a.m. in the morning, to be able to stay around in an area. So, despite the fact that we've worked with some of them for 30 odd years, they just won't be able to serve us. And if I can't get my supplies, I can't, and they can't help us out, we really have no choice but to leave. So those are the 2 points I just want to bring up. And we think that these issues and others, based on the current proposal for the daily closing for the pedestrian areas, will make businesses like us unable to survive, and we would just have to move. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the deputant?
Yeah.
Deputy Mayor?
So just a few questions. So you said this is going to cost you $500,000 a year, yes?
This is I need to offset it with about $500,000 of revenue. So that's about anywhere between a 20 to, doubling the revenue depending on the business you're talking about. So yeah.
You have to double your revenue.
Not for me. We would have to probably increase it by 20, 30%, but let's say a small cafe, that's still $500,000 for them. So you can imagine that would be doubling the revenue for something like that.
Wow. So these changes that are being proposed are going to hurt these businesses.
Yeah. Just as an example, if I had to, I'm actually getting a chicken supply delivered right now. If I had to change a supplier that could meet the requirements, I'm probably paying another $40,000, $50,000 a year. So that would mean, using a profit margin of less than 10, that would be, I would need $500,000 of revenue just to offset my chicken costs.
And the additional, so you also said that, just generally that trades don't want to come downtown because of the additional aggravation for things like congestion and all, and the difficulties that already exist coming downtown. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. I don't have a plumber right now. I have to do my own plumbing because no plumber will come downtown if I have an emergency.
Right. Have you noticed as well that some of your customers that might otherwise try and come down to sample your food and dine at your restaurant would be less enthusiastic to coming downtown, families and things like that?
We already hear stories today that people find it challenging to find parking, to drive downtown, what have you. So
yeah,
yes, we still have a lot of our customers in the area, but those who have, whether moved out because of they finished school or they moved out for work, it's a challenge for them. We see less of them on the weekends when they usually do come down.
And things are already tough right now, I imagine, sir.
Things are incredibly tough because of COVID. And over the past 10 years, profit margins have dropped because operating costs for restaurants, property taxes, real estate, labor costs, those have just gone higher and higher. It's just getting, the average restaurant in Toronto has a profit margin of under 4%.
Wow. Well, thank you for taking time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Pruta, 3 minutes.
You know what, Councilman Wong kind of raises some interesting issues, and this is something I'd never really sort of thought about. We always hear, as it relates to business models, if you open a restaurant in I don't know, Central Scarborough, do you build it on a sort of, do you open that restaurant on the premise that some guy is going to get out of his condominium in downtown Toronto and drive out to Scarborough to dine at your restaurant? I mean, you'll get the odd person, but is that the way sort of these businesses are generally sort of set up to operate?
I wouldn't be able to speak for a restaurant out in Scarborough. That's the one interesting thing about the restaurant business is there's so many different business models from a restaurant like ours, a mom and pop, a quick service restaurant, to bars. I know that when we had a location at Shops and Don Mills, people will drive distances for bars, but they will not drive distance for a food restaurant like ours. We are a neighborhood business.
So you're like a neighborhood business. So your model is your business model is premised on attracting sort of the bulk of your clientele. Being able to make it or break it on your business based on local patronage. Correct?
I think that would be the case for a lot of restaurants in the downtown area.
Okay, so yeah, because that was going to be my next question. My next question, and I'm glad you answered that, because my next question was going to be, do you think that businesses that open up in the downtown core, for example, that their business model is different than the guy who opens in Central Scarborough?
Even next to us, if you talk to Barbarian Steakhouse, Eren's business,
I know that.
He has a different model from us.
I like that steakhouse. I used to like it a lot more when I was younger.
Eren's business, a lot of people drive in for his restaurant versus my business, which is local, and we share the same back alley. So different businesses will have different models. So for us, we have challenges with delivery and the logistics. For him, he would have problems bringing customers in.
But let's focus on that for a second, because this is really important. I think it's an important point. So Barbarians. The reason I know Barbarians is because I sat in the legislature for some years, and that was one of the sort of favorite places of a few of the members that I sat with. They introduced me to it, so that's why I know it. So if I'm going to go out and look for a steakhouse, that's a steakhouse I'm going to remember. And because I live in the suburbs, I may actually make the trip down to the core, to eat at Barbarians, and that might be sort of a one-off, but. Somebody living out in Mississauga that doesn't really know Barbarians, are they going to make that trip to Barbarians to eat there?
I think if you talk to a lot of people, the answer would be it's too much of a pain to drive downtown, and that would be a consideration for them.
And
they would come down to
that's a wrap on your time for questions. Thank you. Our next, is there any additional questions of the deputant? Okay, thank you. Seeing none, our next deputant is Shaylin Bass McFall. Okay. James Brandino. Gideon Foreman. Gideon, you need to connect your mic.
Can you hear me now, Madam Chair?
Thank you. We can hear you. You have 3 minutes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. My apologies for the slow uptake there on the audio connection. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today, committee members. My name is Gideon Foreman. I'm a transportation policy analyst at the David Suzuki Foundation, and we're here today to support the staff recommendation regarding Young Tomorrow. We support it for a number of reasons. First, Madam Chair, it promotes road safety. When we widen sidewalks and install protected bike lanes, we create a safer street for everyone, and that includes walkers, Madam Chair, cyclists, and yes, motorists. We know this because of our experience with the pilot bike lane on Bloor Street, among others. Following the Bloor Street pilot's installation, the total number of conflicts between all road users decreased by 44%, according to city staff. Second, Madam Chair, Young Tomorrow will be good for local business, and I think this is something that all of us in every sector of the city want to see. Staff say that the project supports, and I quote, more space for outdoor cafes, vending and retail, unquote, and will help downtown Yonge, quote, become a premier urban destination for tourists and city residents, unquote. Staff also cite research, Madam Chair, suggesting that people walking and cycling visit more often and spend more per month on retail streets than those driving. The pandemic has been enormously challenging for local business. We all agree on that. But Young Tomorrow, which will bring more shoppers to the city core, is part of the solution. Finally, we support the project because it addresses the climate crisis. I don't need to tell you, Madam Chair, that Toronto's second largest source of greenhouse gas emissions is transportation, and most of the emissions in this sector come from personal vehicles. Offering alternatives, more choices to the gas-burning automobile is absolutely crucial. If we want our children to have a livable planet, we must make it easier for folks to walk and cycle, and that's exactly what Young Tomorrow will do. Madam Chair, as you know, last November, Dr. David Suzuki sent a personal letter to Mayor Tory urging him to expedite the rollout of protected bicycle lanes. Dr. Suzuki wrote, and I quote, "I understand you will soon be considering the Reimagining Young and Young Tomorrow projects. I urge you to support them," unquote. Madam Chair, while we strongly endorse the staff recommendations, let me just mention finally that we do have two concerns. We do wonder if cyclists will have adequate protection on the Queen to Shooter section of the project. We ask staff to consider adding cycle tracks here. We also have concerns about the timeline. While we recognize that Young Tomorrow is complex and will involve water main reconstruction, we are baffled by the fact that it may not be completed until 2025 or beyond. We do ask staff to see if a shorter construction period would be possible. These issues notwithstanding, we very much hope that you will approve the project. The staff recommendation is based on extensive consultation, which I was personally pleased to be part of, but many, many stakeholders were involved, and we believe it represents a reasonable and balanced approach. Young Tomorrow will make the streets safer, help us meet our climate targets, Madam Chair, and provide new customers and a business-friendly environment for our local merchants.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the deputant? Okay, seeing none, thank you, Gideon.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Our next speaker is John Leeson. Mr. Leeson, we think you just need to turn your mic on. We'll try the next one. We'll come back. Our next speaker would be Chris Marshall. Angelo De Palma.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Thank you. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair McElvey and members of the Infrastructure and Environment Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Angelo De Palma. I'm a principal and portfolio manager at Bentall Green Oak, a fiduciary investment manager that represents 10 Dundas Street East, a cultural landmark and significant stakeholder within the downtown Yonge business improvement area. We would like to voice our opposition to the staff report and recommendations before you today on the Young Tomorrow Environmental Assessment Study. As currently proposed, the recommended design concept would significantly interrupt north-south traffic movement on Yonge Street between Queen and College Streets, would jeopardize the vitality of our businesses, and fails to reflect the major safety and operational concerns raised throughout the consultation process. The majority of the retailers at 10 Dundas Street East are part of large national chains which run complex, just-in-time delivery and distribution networks to supply their businesses. These recommendations leave our businesses vulnerable to supply shocks, disrupt our retailers, who will then have no visibility on when and whether they can reliably get inventory into their stores and ensure continued robust operations. On any given day, tenant deliveries at 10 Dundas Street East average upwards to 100 commercial vehicles, many of them 48-foot trailers, which will be impacted by this proposal. Furthermore, the notion of intermixing large commercial vehicle traffic with areas that are designated as pedestrian priority zones will invariably result in increased safety concerns under the current proposal. The reality does not meet or equal the narrative. Alternatively, forcing overnight deliveries is simply incompatible with our tenants' business models and will increase costs and interfere with our buildings' overnight waste management, organic and cardboard pickup services. Yonge Street is Toronto's most iconic main street. Removing vehicular traffic from Yonge Street will not strengthen the economic viability of this globally recognized commercial hub. Our retailers and the customers they serve and the millions of annual visitors to the square are served every day, both directly and indirectly, by vehicular access on Yonge Street. And the plans being advanced today put those interests in peril. In 2019, for example, our traffic counters at 10 Dundas Street East, these are those electronic devices that we've installed that measure the property's daily traffic, counted a total of 9.9 million people. By comparison, in 2020, the total traffic count at our building was just 3 million, down over 70%. In addition, our property income has reduced in 2020 from the previous year by over 31%. Indeed, it's going to be a long road to recovery for us and for all businesses. However, we believe that any permanent road closures will only hamper this recovery. Longer term, will limit access to our property by our customers, clients, and guests, only worsening the current situation. To be clear, 10 Dundas Street East is supportive of occasional temporary street closures for major festivals, and we've always accommodated these events on an as-needed basis. Business on Yonge Street has been significantly impacted with the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic and will struggle again during the lengthy water main replacement work and rebuild of Yonge Street over the next few years.
Thank you. That's 3 minutes.
Now is not the time to be creating additional challenges for local business who cannot take another hit rebuilding the street in a way that completely undermines the commercial operations and character of the area.
Thank you.
Built up over decades.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I will just advise the committee members that the fire alarm is going off here in City Hall, so sorry for the background noise. Are there any questions of this deputant? Okay. Seeing none, thank you. We will move to our next deputant, William Logar. We don't believe William's on the line. Is Marcello Cabizas on the line?
Yes, I am. Hello.
Thank you. And please correct the pronunciation of your name if I got that wrong. You have 3 minutes.
Very good, Madam Speaker. Well, good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Marcello Cabezas, and I'm speaking today to affirm my support. First off, I'm a proud citizen of Toronto. I've always tried to bring luster to the fabric of our great city and have encouraged active citizenship along the way. Net, I've developed to be a subject matter expert about how citizens like to spend their leisure time and how to motivate them to take action on common goals and beliefs. Let me say it's great news to see that there's been unprecedented support and enthusiasm from citizens of Toronto for Young Tomorrow. As we know, city politics can at times be perceived to be a little dry and not that exciting. Sure, citizens can be encouraged to get involved during an election cycle, but what about other times? How can we inspire citizens to actually care about what happens in their everyday world and assert that they actually have a voice? We have seen groundswell of a diverse group of citizens that truly represent the Toronto of today rise up enthusiastically and say, yes, this is a forward-thinking plan that makes sense across the board and delivers a desired destination, to speak to a previous deputant's assertion to the opposite. They collectively believe there is a perfect storm upon us that should inspire us all to seize this moment, for it is a moment that will pass us if we don't grab it. And most importantly, they are citizens of all ages and have chosen to step up and support, not just at this stage, but we have their commitment to roll up their sleeves and aid in all aspects of making Young Tomorrow happen. So, members of the committee, the key takeaway on this for you can be communicated in 4 simple yet powerful words. You are not alone. You, the mayor, your other councillor colleagues, city staff, and all the usual players that are and would work on this. There's an emergence of unprecedented active citizenship supporting this. They see a part of themselves in what this can be, a destination we all can be proud of for the city of today and tomorrow. This positive and optimistic halo and focus is something that we all need right now. A good news story, something we all can focus on and help build, something grand but accessible, something that we can bring our citizens together to act as a catalyst for our Torontonians to build bridges with other citizens. Let's move forward and focus on the very idea that a Torontonian is a Torontonian is a Torontonian, not just when the Raptors win championships, not just when Shawn Mendes plays the Rogers Centre, not just when Hollywood descends upon us during the film festival. Let this pride of being a Torontonian be reflected in our places, our streets, our destination. Let us all collectively contribute to making Yonge Street a thoughtful, inclusive, vibrant place where all is welcome, a place where we are proud to invite people to, a place that we all see as a privilege to go to. Let it be revered by our citizens and those from around the world. And let us not dither. Let's not make this if we only did that type moment. Let us do this together, politicians and citizens. Let us create something responsibly that's truly magnificent. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your deputation. Are there any questions of the deputant? Councillor Wong-Tam.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And just to through you very quickly, Marcelo, your deputation is a little bit different than others we've heard so far. You're speaking about a civic purpose almost and a placemaking component. Can you just further elaborate in a few short sentences for us? What does Toronto as a main street, what could it mean for the city and perhaps the way we project out to the world?
Yeah, that's a great question, Councillor, and thank you for that. I've worked with, interesting notables, bringing Woody Harrelson to do cultural theater plays and bringing the Jimmy Kimmel Live Toronto with 3 levels of tourism to sell the city to a millennial demographic in the United States. It was always a question in terms of, you have such a great city, but what about Yonge Street? There is such a great opportunity here to do something that is truly, that reflects the 21st century, that reflects all the things that staff, has recommended. I mean, the world does look at Toronto, and we are a world-class city, but right now, we need to make the right choice and make Yonge Street the true destination that really reflects the world-class city that we are.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions of the deputant? Seeing no further deputants, thank you. We'll move back. We now believe that John Leeson is on the line.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and thank you, committee members. Apologize for the previous delay. This is only the second time I've given a deputation at City Hall, although I've lived in Toronto all my life, and decided to speak because I love the city and because Yonge Street spoke to me. Yonge has bookended my life. I grew up in Willowdale, about a mile from Yonge. When my family moved there in 1955, Yonge was the only street with any retail, commercial, or transit resources. A few months ago, my wife and I moved downtown, just a block from Yonge. I spent a lot of time walking here and clearly see the terrible inadequacy of Yonge as a place to walk, bike, shop. It's clearly not up to the needs of the massively growing residential, school, and business populations. Yonge falls terribly short of what our main street should be. Visitors still want to see Yonge Street like New York visitors want to see and walk Broadway or Fifth Avenue. I can't imagine they're impressed. Major changes are needed, and I want to make the point that we need to take a big step to achieve that. We've done it before. The Toronto of my childhood and youth was dull and parochial. Its transformation over the last 50 years into one of the world's greatest cities to live in has been truly remarkable. One of the symbols of Toronto entering the modern era was the opening of City Hall, but it took the vision and courage of Mayor Nathan Phillips to overcome more cautious approaches. Recently, Toronto has taken some significant steps ahead. We're slowly recognizing that the city's car prioritizing design needs to change. After a mere 50 years of discussion, Toronto finally built bike lanes along Bloor West. And last year, Council quickly built bike infrastructure on University and Danforth. And please make sure they become permanent. And I was extremely happy that Council approved the Reimagining Young plan of the young of my childhood. I hope these are signs that Toronto is embracing the 21st century, and I urge the committee to commit to progress this transformation of my hometown and now of our main street. Young can no longer be the young of 100 years ago. I believe the staff recommendations before you will remake Young into the street we need and deserve today and tomorrow. Thank you very much for your time.
Madam Chair, am I taking it over this
Yes,
point?
Mr. Vice Chair, you can go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you. Questions for the deputant? I see Councillor Cole. I see Councillor Wong Tam. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Chair, and for you to the deputant. You are a resident of the area, so your perspective is going to be different once again than perhaps some of the other speakers we've spoken to. For you, it sounds like Yonge Street is a place where you do some shopping and perhaps some dining. You've described very briefly about Yonge Street being inadequate, but I also gather that you're also perhaps a man of advanced age. And I say that with a lot of fondness. Can you tell me if Yonge Street, or tell us in your words, if Yonge Street is age friendly, as an age friendly street for someone who is in his older years, or perhaps watching children navigate Yonge Street? Is it a friendly and safe space for all age people?
Thank you, Councillor. I don't feel like I'm getting around great difficulty anywhere. I still basically travel by bike and walking. But it isn't. As I walk along, I mean, obviously I see the same thing other people do, how narrow the sidewalks can be in places with all the construction. I really feel for people who do have difficulties getting around. You know, I went out last night. I walked from Wellesley down to King, and you know, saw these kind of obstructions. You know, so no, I don't think it is very age friendly in many ways.
Yeah, and part of the staff
mobility friendly for those with mobility difficulties of any age.
Thank you, John. And for those, I mean, for the staff recommendation before us right now, the current proposal is to reconfigure and to reimagine the section of Yonge Street from College and Carlton down to Queen. But there is a second phase of work that will then take this Yonge Street element and design that's before us and then flip it north. So we continue to transform Yonge from College to Davenport. And is that the area that will be beneficial to you and your family?
I'm not sure. By the time all this is built, I'm not sure if it will be beneficial. Yes, I'm just a few blocks north of College right now. I'm looking forward to extending all the way up Yonge, up into Midtown, the Midtown Yonge project as well.
Okay. Thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you.
Thank you. I understand that Councillor Cole also has a question.
Yes, thank you, John, for your presentation. And I don't think you're a person of advanced age. I think you're a very mature Torontonian. Anyways, I wanted to ask you, you know, I know you are a former resident of Willowdale, Bloor West, now you're downtown. What in this transformative project sort of inspires you that you think will make it better in this part of the city, in the heart of the city on Yonge Street? What is needed that's in this project?
Space. You know, as I said before, it's we know how tight the area is. There's really nothing to attract people visually, physically to get around. You know, I think of opening up the area to the kind of cafes and restaurants. You know, we've all been to other cities where it's very pedestrian friendly, and just to walk around an area where it's a place where people live and not just get by. get through, which is sort of how Yonge Street feels today. That's what really attracts me.
Okay, thank you, John.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. Are there any additional questions of the deputant? Okay, seeing none, thank you. Our next deputant is Martin Ray.
Yes, good morning.
Hi, good morning. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Martin Ray. I'm Vice President of Operations at Cadillac Fairview. On behalf of Cadillac Fairview and the CF Toronto Eaton Centre, I'd like to thank the members of this committee for the opportunity to share our views on the Yonge Tomorrow project today. As the owner and operator of CF Toronto Eaton Centre and on behalf of the businesses within it, we do object in the strongest possible terms to the proposed reconfiguration of Yonge Street and especially the effective closure of the street to vehicles and lane reduction. We are actually quite surprised to see today the amended attachment 8, which just references the potential layout of the street. We were advised by and directed to a report that outlined a very detailed view of the Yonge Tomorrow project, a project which we have been provided stakeholder feedback for the past 2 years. However, when looking at attachment 8 and seeing the inclusion of potential gate locations, it's clear that the principles of the design 4D have not been changed or amended. And while we'll need some time to look at the updated attachment 8, I would have these 3 comments. Firstly, there is no provision for curbside pickup or drop-off along the entire frontage of the CF Toronto Eaton Centre. As one of the busiest venues in the city by any measure, either tourism, leisure, work or transportation, this is clearly a shortcoming. Secondly, there appears to be no provision for left or right turn lanes along the entire extent of the street. If this is with one-way traffic, then any vehicles turning would cause immediate traffic congestion. And we remain clear that we do not support a reduction in traffic lanes on Yonge Street, and this has definitely not been demonstrated as needed, particularly south of Dundas Street. If staff are to go back now and design the operational aspects of the street, and if the principles of recommended design concept 4D are still an option in this future design work, then our comments would be that permanent street closure, even for scheduled hours, is not acceptable. Eliminating vehicular traffic would be catastrophic for business, significantly curtailing the number of customers and their interactions in the area. Deliveries, waste management, and other services for downtown businesses will be severely hampered. A flexible street concept is definitely supported for activations. Sections of Yonge Street can be restricted to pedestrian traffic for major festivals and events, but only for these occasions as in the past. We believe that the addition of bike lanes on Bay Street, University Avenue and Church Street can accommodate the north and south flows while connecting to the already established bike lanes for east-west flows via Girard, Shooter, Richmond and Adelaide. We need to include logistics like power and water in street design. Power and water supplies would be essential for regular maintenance and to support activations. And redesigning Yonge Street will be a generational opportunity to upgrade these systems and must be considered in our planning decisions. We need to take a holistic approach to safety. It's imperative that designs take into account all of the social issues we face today, and these must be taken into account in the future. Any pedestrianisation of Yonge Street requires the increased social services and wraparound supports that we currently don't have in the neighbourhood.
Thank you. Thank you for your deputation. Are there questions of the deputant? Councillor Wong Tam.
Very much, Madam Chair. I recognize that you are working under some difficult circumstances with a fire alarm. Through you, Madam Chair, to the deputant. Martin, thank you so much for your deputation. Your first point that you raised about needing drop-off provisions to be made on Yonge Street in front of the Eaton Centre, did you express that to staff? Is that you wanted sort of drop-off zones on Yonge Street for parcels or perhaps for passengers directly in front of the Eaton Centre?
Yes, that's been, and through the chair, that has been a feedback from us throughout this process, whatever the final street design was. We made clear that it was vital that our retail, and also remember that Toronto Eaton Centre has a significant office population as well, particularly 250 Yonge Street, and that needed to be serviced by any redesign of the street. when I look at the attachment 8, there are no pickup or drop-off locations on the Toronto Eaton Centre side of the street.
Just across the street, and just to verify, just to confirm, the Eaton Centre does have its own master loading bay, does it not? Like for the large deliveries.
Yeah, sorry, through the chair, I'm speaking about taxi, ride hail, customer pickup and drop off. I'm not specifically speaking to retail and logistical deliveries like that.
Thank you. And directly across the street, a part of the street design from staff, there is an area for pickup and drop off. Is there not? Not directly in front of your section of the street, but across the street.
Yes, there is, and through the chair, attachment 8 shows those locations on the east side of Yonge Street. That would relate to design concept 4D, which shows that there is only northbound traffic on Yonge Street in that section. And so, that's where there's a little bit of confusion here as to whether we are speaking to design concept 4D or attachment 8. Regardless, whatever designs are finally put forward, we would ask that those provisions are made adjacent to Toronto Eaton Centre.
Yeah, thank you. And Martin, just to confirm, your objections are not just with respect to the operations of the street, considered, meaning that we haven't landed on the operations yet. Your objections are that that Yonge Street should remain with 4 lanes of traffic. Is that what I heard from your deputation? That you object to the narrowing of the roadway and the widening of the sidewalks?
Through the chair, yes, we don't believe that reduction of traffic lanes, particularly south of Dundas, has been shown as being necessary. But I would also just like to make a comment. The operational designs, yes, the operational designs have to be now made, but the attachment 8 is designed with all of the recommended design concept 4D aspects still included. So I want to speak strongly to the design concept 4D. Those operational aspects just would not be acceptable.
Thank you. That's time. Are there additional questions of the deputant?
James Pasternak.
Thank you. Councillor Pasternak.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Martin, for this deputation. I have some correspondence dated January the 8th of this year, actually. How many businesses operate out of the Eaton Centre?
We would have about 250 plus retail stores. We also have 4 significant office towers. So we have we have Queen Street, we have 250 Yonge, we have 1 Dundas. We also have the new BMO campus above Nordstrom. So along with the retail, we have 4 significant office components as well, about 7,000 to 10,000 office workers per day.
So you're the landlord, and that's fine. Do many of these businesses, whether they be retail or whether they be office, commercial, share your views?
We have spoken to a great number of our clients, both retail and office. I have spoken one-on-one, and we have also communicated to them. And we have had a unanimous response from those we've spoken to, which is to support our view that this design and reduction of traffic on Yonge Street would not be acceptable to their business.
Now, I'm assuming it's pretty well conventional wisdom that businesses have suffered enormously over the last 10 months. Would you say the recovery would be enhanced or impaired by Yonge tomorrow?
Yes, through the chair. I mean, that's a very great question. We are, as one of Canada's largest retail landlords, we are obviously facing a very long recovery from what we've gone through in the last year. Our retail clients and our office clients too, but particularly retail, have suffered catastrophic losses. We expect the next 2 years of retail to be a very, very tough time, and our retailers will be looking to us to remove any barriers we can possibly remove, and anything that impedes their ability to scrabble their way back to profitability would obviously be a burden we would not want them to face.
All right. So in paragraph 4, you've in pretty strong terms, you have said that this project will undermine the commercial viability of the complex and neighboring businesses. That's pretty serious stuff for an economy that we're trying to protect.
Yes, I mean, as we've heard from some other deputants today, the logistical impact of this, both on costs as well as effort and time and resources, will be incredibly significant for our retailers. You know, a retailer visiting this city, maybe to do business with us, if they are facing congestion to get in and out, that is always a challenge to convince them to come and invest with us. Our office towers are obviously...
Thank you. I just have to wrap that up. Okay. Deputy Mayor, 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you very much, through you, Madam Chair, to Cadillac Fairview. I'm guessing you've done some economic studies, but maybe you can comment on this statement. When people come downtown to shop, they mostly say their first place they're going is the Eaton Centers. Does your research show that?
Well, thank you for the question through the chair. I mean, we have a very large trade area. We would be considered, you know, a major tourist as well as a retail attraction. So we would attract people from all over the world. We have about 30% of our retail clients would be classed as a tourist. So they will be coming from all points throughout Canada and throughout the world. But our traffic for retail does extend throughout the Greater Toronto area. We will be a destination as far out into the west end of Mississauga, Oakville, even far as Burlington.
Yeah.
So we do have a huge draw because, of course, we are maybe people coming into work and shop. But as a tourist and retail destination, we would consider our trade area to be the world.
Yeah. So when someone comes to Toronto, they want to come to the Eaton Centre, right? If it's shopping that they want, yeah, they'll make a stop.
Thank you. Yes, and through the chair, absolutely yes. We are Canada's #1 tourist attraction, and we will be one of the world's busiest shopping centres.
So you're essentially the anchor tenant on Yonge Street if it was seen as one entity.
Through the chair, yes. I mean, Yonge Street is definitely more than just Toronto Eaton Centre. We are a proud member of the whole neighbourhood, but we have certainly been instrumental in bringing retail such as Saks and Nordstrom and other world-class retailers to Toronto. You know, and through us, we contribute through about $80 million in annual taxes that we pay, plus, of course, all of the sales and revenue that we generate through our businesses.
And you're saying this current proposal, the taking out of these 2 lanes of traffic, is going to be bad for business?
Through the chair, yes, we believe so strongly. And
your tenants say this too?
All the tenants that I have personally spoken to on the office and retail side support that view.
Because it's going to be harder to come downtown and shop, and people aren't going to want to do that. Is that a fair characterization, or at least a part of the story?
Absolutely, yes. The perception of congestion, I don't think it is ever good for attracting traffic, especially when in the next few months and years, we are going to be looking to attract people back into the city core. That's going to be a challenge on its own. I don't think this would help.
Yeah,
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the questions. Are there any additional questions of the deputant? Sorry, I need a second for the screen to switch. Councillor Leighton, 3 minutes.
Yeah. Yes, thank you very much. I'm really curious about I've lived in downtown my whole life. The number of people that actually drive to the Eaton Centre to shop. Can you give us an idea of how many people on a daily basis would go to the Eaton Centre outside of pre-COVID times? Just the shopping portion.
And we would be approximately about 1 million people a week come through the Toronto Eaton Centre.
So 1 million per week. So, like roughly speaking, on a daily basis.
Well, on an average day, it's probably about you'd be talking a couple 100,000 on a good day, depending on the weekend traffic, obviously different during the day. But we roughly have about 1 million a week. And of course, some of that is transit, some of that is shopping, some of that is office clients.
So the parking scenario at Eaton Center, what portion is retail? What portion is your office commercial? Is there dedicated office commercial parking?
There are some office clients who have dedicated parking, but it would not be the majority of our parking spaces. Most of our parking is transient.
Is transient. So do you know how much of it is how many people are coming to park for the retail as opposed to the office?
I don't really have those numbers because a transient person could be visiting an office tower. They could be visiting retail. We wouldn't really know the difference. You wouldn't know. Sure.
Yeah. Do you know how often during the daytime a spot turns over in your parking lot?
I don't have those numbers handy to me today, actually, Councillor. We do have some metrics like that, but I don't have that to hand.
2-3 times, would you say?
I don't want to speculate. Our parking spaces, because of office and retail, we have 2 different lots, as well as our customers parking adjacent parking lots to just us. So it's difficult to predict exactly how much is being used and who is going where, but I don't have those numbers right now, I'm afraid.
So you have 1,400 parking spaces, right?
Correct.
1,411. And you have a couple 100,000 people visiting on a daily basis, correct?
Well, I say our rough number is about 1 million a week.
1 million a week, a couple 100,000 a day, and 1,400 parking spaces. Do you think it's safe to say that a vast majority of the people shopping in your retail are not getting there by car? Or are you not prepared to make that conclusion?
I think it's fair to say that it's a downtown urban shopping center with 2 transit stops with significant parking, that our customers come from everywhere. Our customers come as tourists who are visiting, either taking a taxi or a rideshare to visit us. They are coming into the city for the day and maybe parking at a hotel and then coming to visit us. So and please wrap up. From all ways, but I think the perception of congestion and difficult to get into the neighborhood is our concern.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions of the deputant? Okay, seeing none, thank you. That brings us to our next deputant, Mark Noskovich. And please correct the pronunciation if I didn't get that right. You have 3 minutes. Thank you for joining us.
That was close enough. Thank you. Good morning, Chair McKelvey and committee members. I'm here speaking on behalf of Great Eagle Hotels, the owner of the Chelsea Hotel site. Stuart Anderson of BA Group, who's listed as the next deputant, is available to answer any questions that arise from my comments. We submitted a letter dated January 6th. I think it's part of your materials. It was written before Attachment 8 of the staff report, which you're being asked to endorse today, was revised to remove operational matters and focus only on physical design. Great Eagle's concerns were and are with the operational matters. So the removal of those matters from Attachment 8 has dealt with those concerns, at least in the short term. So I'll just briefly summarize Great Eagle's concerns. And the first thing I want to say is that Great Eagle is supportive of enhancing the pedestrian experience along Yonge Street. Its redevelopment project for the Chelsea site has, from the outset, been intended to enhance pedestrian permeability through the block and connections to Yonge Street. It introduces a public park, a publicly accessible open space that reconnects Walton Street from Bay to Yonge, and all of those will help to better connect the site to Yonge Street. Great Eagle's concerns, as I've said, do relate to the operational matters, which have now been removed from Attachment 8. Its particular concern was with the pedestrian priority zone, which would preclude a southbound movement vehicular movement from Walton to Elm. And as we set forth in our letter, and based on the advice we have from BA Group, a southbound movement from Walton to Elm is essential to provide around the block circulation for the hotel use, the other uses within the Chelsea site, as well as other developments within the block. As I indicated, those operational matters have been removed from attachment 8. You heard from Ms. Hayward that you're being asked to endorse the physical design at this time, and you're not locking in any operational matters. So, you know, as I said, our concerns, or Great Eagle's concerns, have been addressed in the short term. We do note that there are still a few operational matters on attachment 8. There's some potential traffic gates. There's the curb radius at Walton and Young implies that a right turn movement out of there will not be permitted. If the intention was to remove all operational matters, that was perhaps an oversight. In any event, when the operational matters come back before council, I think Ms. Hayward suggested that would be in 2023. Those details will be looked at. Great Eagle has been part of the consultation process to date, and it anticipates there will be a robust consultation over the operational matters in 2023 or thereabouts, and it looks forward to being part of those discussions. Thank you.
Thank you for your deputation. Are there any questions of the deputant? Okay, seeing none. I know Stuart is online. Was he also giving a deputation or just available to answer questions?
I think the latter.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. That brings us to apologies. So a deputant from earlier is now on the line, Arthur Klimovich.
Hello, thank you for coming back for me.
Thank you. You have 3 minutes.
I'm here. You're hearing me?
You have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. All right. I've lived in St. Lawrence neighborhood now for 23 years. I've worked in and close to the commercial towers in IT, finance, and business for over 30 years. I am an active advocate for a better Ward 13 and the city at large, belonging to several organizations, including building delegate for St. Lawrence Neighborhood Association, ward captain, Cycle Toronto for the Toronto Centre Cyclists, and active participant in Toronto Community Bikeways Coalition. I always work on having a true understanding of the local issues and, most importantly, my neighbors' thoughts and beliefs. So when I ask somebody, what do you think of having Yonge Street changing to a more human area, I hear a resounding yes. The support for the plans outlined in Young Tomorrow has strong support in the neighborhood. I wholeheartedly agree that we need to keep moving forward with a Young Tomorrow project. So what do people really want? Round one study asked the question, how much space should be dedicated to each mode of transport? We answered pedestrians 50 to 75%, cyclists 15 to 20, enjoyment 15 to 20, driving 0 to 10%. The point here is that the current plan is respectful of the original study result. Anything less for us would be very disrespectful. I believe Torontonians are becoming smarter about community and city building as the need and opportunity calls for solutions. The fact is, local businesses prosper when people are interacting with businesses at eye level. People need TTC stops, cycling, walking, public spaces. Cars simply create more problems like safety, pollution, wasted space. Of course, people and especially businesses need vehicles. Yet I would think a business would see the writing on the wall and start to ramp up to match or even lead in the ever-growing call for a new way of living, instead of holding on to outmoded set of incorrect beliefs, which would then completely miss out on a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I just want to say that I definitely approve of the plan. I think it's a great thing, and this would add a lot of joy, a lot of business, and a really great street that, as someone else said, you know, people will talk about in other parts of the world. Yonge Street, as far as I know, people kind of go there, but that's what you do. You go, you do some shopping, and people in other parts of the world aren't really talking about Yonge Street. They talk about Queen West.
Thank you. Final thought?
All these other little neighborhoods we have. I want it to be Yonge Street. I want Yonge Street to be that place. So I completely support the staff recommendations for Yonge tomorrow.
Thank you for your presentation. Are there any questions of the deputant? Okay, thank you, Arthur. That brings us to our next speaker, who is Christian Rojas. Joe DeSommer. Annie Raphael. We do believe the next deputy is online. Robin Richardson.
Yes, hi. Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you. You have 3 minutes.
Great. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this morning. My name is Robin Richardson, and I live with my husband and 3 children in Midtown. We have made the decision as a family to stop driving and to travel by bicycle or transit exclusively within Toronto to reduce our carbon footprint and avoid posing a danger to other road users. We frequently visit downtown Yonge Street to shop, dine, sightsee, and volunteer. I'm speaking this morning in favor of safe and extensive infrastructure to protect cyclists, pedestrians, and transit users. On October 3rd, 2019, City Council declared a climate emergency and agreed that the city should prioritize emissions reduction in transportation retrofits, including, quote, accelerating the implementation of Transform TO climate actions at every opportunity, end quote. We all know that private cars have a higher rate of emissions than any other mode of transport, more than 10 times the rate of bicycling or walking. The easiest way to reduce our city's total carbon footprint is to encourage more travel using non-car modes such as transit, walking, and cycling. According to the city's Vision Zero plan, travel in Toronto and East York, which includes the sections of Yonge Street under consideration here, is 32% by car, 37% by transit, and 31% active transport such as biking and walking. In other words, people arriving by car account for less than a third of all the visitors to the area, yet users of all other modes must crowd together on the narrow sidewalks, or in the case of cyclists, the gutter, to make room for cars and car parking. Of course, people outside of cars also bear the greatest risk of injury or death from inattentive or aggressive drivers. A June 2019 article in the CBC summarized studies from across North America which showed that implementation of bike lanes increases retail and restaurant sales on the affected streets. People who arrive on foot or by bike visit more shops and spend more money overall than people who come by car. Low or no traffic streets encourage tourists and residents alike to linger, make impulse purchases, stay to dine, and build community. The city can address its goals in all 3 areas: emissions reduction, pedestrian and cyclist safety, and economic benefit to retailers and restaurants by building protected and prioritized pedestrian and cycling infrastructure along the length of Yonge Street. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this morning.
Thank you for your deputation. Are there any questions of the deputant? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to the next deputation. Do we have Valerie Karasev on the line? Esteban Diaz? Edward Eng? Jen Hockenstein? We do believe the next deputant is present. Megan Orlinsky?
Yeah, hold on.
Thank you, Megan. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm here to talk about my experience as a Ryerson student eating Salad King. Yonge Street was dangerous, stressful, and crowded. I have too many stories of almost personally being hit or of seeing paramedics working on injured citizens, and that was over a decade ago. With the growth of population, it's so much worse. Now, as a mom of 2 stall children, logistically, it's impossible or too expensive to pay for parking to shop there. Cadillac Fairview, if your parking prices were less prohibitive and if they weren't always full, maybe I would shop there. Why would I drive there when I can go to another mall with the same stores and get free parking somewhere else? Tourists don't come to downtown Toronto to drive around. And I shouldn't need to point out the spending power of families, or the biggest profit margins in restaurants is alcohol. Drivers cannot or should not drink as much as pedestrians or those who take public transportation. I don't shop on Yonge because the car people who feel the same. As a native of Toronto, born just around the corner at Women's College, I wonder how my children will be able to enjoy their city. Integrated areas like St. Clair and Lakeshore are constantly busy, and let's think about that. I was going to talk about the importance of green infrastructure to the physical and mental health of its citizens, but I'm inspired to talk about Dundas Square. I was a student during the construction and design of that embarrassment. It's a cheap, unimaginative copy of Times Square. It adds nothing to Toronto's unique identity. If it was designed better to respect people as more than just eyeballs for corporate advertising, it would be busier. Its opening was disappointing at best for anyone I knew in the community. The billboards did not make the area popular. The death of the pornographic movie theaters did this. And who wants to go somewhere and have ads scream at you 24/7, especially in the modern times where screens and ads are everywhere? So if you want more local people spending good money, put in the staff recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you for your deputation. Are there any questions of the deputant? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to our next deputant, John Greenwood. Nick Shaw. Otiena Elwand. Brendan Handel McCarthy. Yashar Shabani. Gilles Penaloza. Oliver Seaton. Alex Coriani. James Burke. Christopher Grimston. We do believe the next deputant is on the line, Benjamin Russell.
I had other questions about the RFI that you guys have submitted. So in the where your office
is Benjamin Russell, you're live, Benjamin?
Oh, here, can I call you back, Guido? Yeah, I'm here.
Hi, Benjamin. Thank you. Thank you for joining us here at Toronto City Hall. You have 3 minutes to depute on the item.
Right on. Thank you, Chair, and apologies, I was multitasking like many are these days. So I am a resident of Ward 13. My wife and I have lived first right across the street from the Eaton Center on Yonge for about 7 months, and then we recently purchased a place at Yonge and Maitland on the east side. So I spent a lot of time traveling up and down Yonge, primarily as a pedestrian, a little bit in the area as a cyclist, as well as a driver and a user of transit. With all that experience, just as a, member of the neighborhood, user of the area, and someone whose primary means of transportation is on foot, I just want to voice my very strong support for this proposal from city staff as it makes its way through the process. As I said, spend a lot of time in the area on foot, including spending a lot of money at local businesses, whether they be retailers, food and beverage, restaurants, cafes, etc., grocery stores, all of that, including many businesses directly on Yonge. And for me, I think the whole area would just become a much more enjoyable, safer place, particularly for pedestrians, but also for other users if this proposal went ahead. And so I just want to voice that, as a resident, as a very, very frequent user of the area, voice my strong support for it. And as others have, at least one other deputy mentioned, if there's any way that this work can be accelerated, and as I now live north of College, also the work from College to Bloor be accelerated as well, that would have my full support. The last thing, I've been listening obviously off and on to some of the other deputations, including those from business owners and landlords along this stretch of Yonge. And as someone who's driven, when I drive, I'll rent a car, I use commute auto, and essentially I try to avoid driving on Yonge. A lot of the intersections are restricted. There's a lot of pedestrians, there's a lot going on. And so you try and spend as little time on Yonge as possible when I'm in a vehicle. That's just me. I use Bay, I use Jarvis, I use Church. And so the idea that restricting vehicle traffic on Yonge will have substantial, obviously there'll be impacts, but the benefits to increase pedestrian traffic and safety for businesses, to me, again, I don't have studies, I don't have data, I just have, my sense as a resident and a taxpayer and a user of the area and all that it has to offer. I think it'll just be greatly beneficial, and so I have my strong support.
Okay, thank you for your deputation. Are there questions of the deputant? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to our next deputant, Mark Garner.
Can you hear me okay?
We can. Thank you. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Let me just pull my notes here. I want to thank you again for the time today in regards to speaking on behalf of the report that's before infrastructure. The downtown Yonge Business Improvement Area represents more than 2,000 businesses and their employees, as well as the broader community of residents, students, and visitors in the heart of downtown Toronto. We care deeply about Yonge Street, and we have taken an active interest in its planning for its future. The Downtown Yonge BIA has taken extensive work in this regard, including a large public consultation called Young Love. We surveyed thousands of people from a wide range of backgrounds and demographics to understand their views on what they want Yonge Street to be. From Young Love and through extensive consultations with our members and local residents, 5 key priorities had emerged. These priorities are to make downtown Yonge a walkable neighborhood, to make Yonge Street a truly flexible street, make Yonge Street a truly complete street, and make downtown Yonge, as always, vibrant neighborhood, and make downtown Yonge a truly inclusive neighborhood. In developing our position on the Yonge Tomorrow initiative, we followed what I would refer to as another lens, which is called the 3 E's: ethics, evidence, and economics. Ethics planning for Yonge Street need to be balanced, taking into account the needs of the entire community. That includes business, retail, restaurants, entertainment, employers, employees, residents, visitors, students, pedestrians, and commuters, including motorists. Evidence-based plans must not be ideological. They need to be based on empirical facts, such as transportation modeling, traffic data, function, as well as other consultations, 3 different viewpoints. Economics, downtown Yonge is critically important to the Toronto economy. Planning for Yonge Street must ensure that the neighborhood remains healthy from business, residential, entertainment, and tourism perspectives. This is even more critical as we start to recover from the pandemic, and these initiatives need to be very focused on restore the core and bring back Main Street, providing essential direction. Based on these considerations and the lenses we've looked at, we have developed a set of principles that are key to guiding Yonge Street development going forward. Fundamentally, we see Yonge Street as a flex street, temporarily closed for vehicles and traffic for major festivals and events and other activations that boost the local economy, such as Luminato, Busker Fest, North by Northeast festivals, but otherwise it remains open for regular roadway use. There are many examples of successful flex streets from around the world, including Market Street in Toronto, Dundas Place in Toronto and London, Ontario, Exhibition Road in London, England, and even New York's Summer
Final
Street
thought,
program,
please.
With her again, I think there's some challenges that we have going forward, and again, eliminating traffic would be catastrophic and significant to the area. We have been concerned in regards to the consultation process.
Thank you.
And we think that the
Okay, questions of the deputant? I saw we have our visiting councillor first, Councillor Wong-Tam.
Yes, thank Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Mark, for your deputation. Just to clarify, the Downtown Young BIA was part of the stakeholder advisory group, were you not?
Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, Councillor Wong-Tam, we have been part of that consultation and have stated our position very clearly through that process.
Okay, thank you. And with respect to your deputation today, about perhaps the process not being as broad as it could have, perhaps voices not being heard, you I hope did have a chance to convey these concerns to staff. Did staff not sit with you and perhaps to delve deeper into understanding how they can better address those concerns? Did the staff not do that?
Through you, Madam Chair, I think, Councillor, just maybe some additional clarity around the question that you're asking. We have identified concerns that we've had in regards to the consultation and some of the other websites and information that's being disseminated. Again, the concern has been there's been some confusion in regards to the BIA's position, and we've stated very clearly in multiple communications, not only to the project team, but to the mayor's office and your office as well as infrastructure committee, on the concerns we've had on that misinformation.
So the proposal before us, sorry, I hear an echo, so can you folks hear me? Yes, okay, thank you. The proposal before us, Mark, is actually a physical design of the roadway, because we need to be able to bundle this work along with the water main reconstruction, as you know, is critical and needed. So right now before us only is the physical design of the roadway, which we need to get to an approval stage for. Is that your understanding? Do you comprehend that that is what the staff's intention is?
Through you, Madam Chair. Again, Councillor, very good question. I think what came late as part of the work that the project team had passed into the community late on Friday is, again, attachment 8. In attachment 8, it still shows support based on the 4D recommendations. So we would voice concern on those potential gates and look forward to the operational plan and very supportive of the operational plan. But again, there's already things that are designed in the document that came out in attachment 8 that is still showing the reduction of vehicle access for deliveries, waste management, all those things, that the potential for pedestrianized zones is still apparent. If there's clarity provided today as part of this conversation and before committee that those are being removed, that we see it as a flex street with a lane north and a lane south, then I think we can get to that sort of operational plan with further conversation, which has been identified even today, that will go over another year to 2-year process.
Yes, okay. Thank you very much for clarifying.
Okay, thank you. Are there any additional questions of the deputant? Councillor Pasternak, 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to follow up on Councillor Wong-Tam's question. So I've got page 4 of the staff report saying that the Downtown Young Business Improvement Area has been advocating for public realm improvements on Yonge Street to support the increasing residential commercial growth. So when I read a sentence like that, it seems that you're supportive. And then I also have your letter of September the 11th, 2020, admittedly some months old, which is quite negative on this plan. And then, of course, I've just heard your deputation. So if I only had the staff report, I would be led to believe that you're supportive of it. But your deputation and your letter says you're not. I wonder if you could clarify that for us.
Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Pasternak. That is the clarity. There has been some confusion. We know, and we have stated very clearly since probably 2012, based on the extensive work we've done, that there has been a need for a pedestrian improvement on Yonge Street, and that we support, and have been pushing those designs and this conversation. A lot of the reports that we've done have fed into the Young Tomorrow initiative that the Transportation Department has initiated. What we are not supportive of is we cannot close Yonge Street to pedestrianized zones at this moment in time, that the traffic still needs to flow.
How many businesses are part of your BIA? Oh, it's about 2,000.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, there's over 2,000, but again, that number is significantly higher when you start to take into account the employment cluster. And we did do detailed surveys with our members, and all our members support our position as identified in that letter, Councillor Pasternak, that you mentioned of September 11th.
So nothing's changed in your view since this letter, which does not support the initiative in front of us?
Through you, Madam Chair, I think the clarity point is based on attachment 8. It still shows infrastructure that support 4D, and that's what we are totally not for. A pedestrian experience has to be improved on Yonge Street, but closing for pedestrian-only zones outside of functional events, large events such as Luminato, North by Northeast Festival, things that generate economics for the city of Toronto, we would not support road closures.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions of the deputant? Okay, thank you for your deputation. We'll move back through the list. Liz Essen, Samantha Yarwood, and the next deputant we do believe is on the line, Donna Patterson.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you. You have 3 minutes, Donna.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair McKelvey and members of the Infrastructure and Environment Committee. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak today. I support the Young Tomorrow project. I've been a resident of downtown Toronto for more than 25 years, and I've worked in finance on and near Yonge Street for more than 30 years. I get to work by walking or by riding my bike, and I also do most of my shopping on or near Yonge Street. Most of the people using Yonge Street currently take transit, walk, or ride a bike, but the sidewalks on Yonge Street are far too narrow to accommodate all of the people walking. We need more space for walkers and cyclists, and we also really need to revitalize Yonge Street and make it safer for everyone. The Young Tomorrow project will accomplish this with wider sidewalks, pedestrian-only areas, and protected cycle lanes in some areas. Young Tomorrow will also help local businesses by opening up more space on Yonge Street for patios, cafes, festivals, and events, and bring more people to the area. When the Raptors won the NBA championship, where did Torontonians go to celebrate? Yonge Street, of course. Young Tomorrow will help to make Yonge Street a destination where people from all across Toronto will want to come to shop, play, and work. Yonge Street needs to become a roadway that better accommodates all road users safely. People walking, people riding bikes, people in wheelchairs, parents with strollers, anyone with accessibility issues, and car drivers. We need a Yonge Street that's safer for everyone. With the Young Tomorrow project, we can make Yonge Street into the iconic street we all know it is, help local businesses, and make Yonge Street safer for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you for your deputation. Are there any questions of the deputant? Okay, seeing none, we will move to our next deputant, Charlotte Langley. And we do believe the last deputant is on the line, Bruce Richardson.
Bruce, it's your turn. Okay. Should we do it on this? It sounds like we're logged on here.
Bruce Richardson, you have the floor.
Okay. Can you hear us?
Hi, we can hear. Is Bruce Richardson?
Okay, yes, here's Bruce. Yes, hi. My name is Bruce.
One moment. I'm not sure who we have connected.
I had so much fun riding freely. I would love it if
So we'll try this again. Do we have Charlotte Langley on the line? Okay, we'll try again. Bruce Richardson?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Hi, we can hear you, although there is quite a bit of feedback. If you have another line that's open, would you mind muting that?
Yeah, is it better now?
Hi, can you try that again?
Is it better now?
Yes, that's better. Okay, thank you, Bruce. You have 3 minutes.
Okay. Hi, my name is Bruce. I'm 11 years old and I love to ride my bike. But lots of times I'm scared to ride my bike downtown. I really loved it when the streets were close to cars in the summertime. I had so much fun riding freely. I would love it if Yonge Street had protected bike lanes so I could ride there without being scared. And I think that every street should have 2 bike lanes and 2 sidewalks. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Are there any questions? Okay, we appreciate you coming out to give your deputation today to City Hall. We believe that is the rest of the deputants. Can we just do a check if there's anybody else on the line? We do have Jill Penalosa on the line. Jill, can you hear us? Jill, you need to turn on your microphone. Can we try one more time there for Jill? We don't believe there's any other deputants on the line, but we will do one last call if there are any. If you could please unmute your mic and identify yourself. Okay, thank you. That closes the deputations. We'll now bring it into questions of staff. And go ahead, our visiting councillor, Councillor Wong Tam.
Thank you very much, Chair. My question to staff is with respect to the new concept that has been posted, Concept D. If I may, just to summarize, the removal of the operations was to clarify for those who are reading the report and to follow the work that you are interested in getting approval from this committee on the physical redesign of the roadway, which is primarily the widening of the sidewalks, the tree furniture zones, and the reduction of lanes of traffic. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that is in fact correct. Councillor Wong Tam, as you know, we now take environmental assessments to about a 30% design, and so in doing so, we've engaged quite significantly with stakeholders, as you've heard from many of the deputations. We have a lot more information. We've done a lot of modeling to understand the traffic implications, both of the physical design and the operations plan. But what is before Council today is just the physical design piece.
Thank you. And with respect to a comment made by a deputy mayor, that there was no consideration of the counts at various times of days, meaning the counts of vehicular traffic or the counts of pedestrian traffic. That is not my reading of the report. Did transportation staff factor in the different types of modal uses at different times of day when you did the transportation traffic study?
We did indeed, and if you want more specific information about that, I'll have Jacqueline just give a quick piece on what we did.
No, that was very sufficient. I just wanted to make sure that was considered because it was stated that it was not. And with respect to the areas that are prescribed right now in the physical design of the roadway, you have consulted broadly with both ride-sharing companies as well as a TTC about and toured buses and so forth and delivery companies that you have the appropriate spaces for the physical passenger pickup drop-off as well as parcel delivery if needed. Do you feel confident that configuration has been thoroughly thought out and what is before us is adequate to support the needs of the community there?
We do, and we also know, as you've described, that the through movement, the 2 lanes that stay open really are designed, the physical design is so that they can stay open all the time. We know there's a night bus that runs on Yonge Street pretty much every night. We need to have the flexibility for shuttle buses for TTC should the subway break down. We also know from the operations perspective that there's going to need to be pretty significant pickup and drop off, both for deliveries and loading, and also for ride share, et cetera. And so that all gets built into the design and a critical piece of that operational plan.
My last question is with respect to the through traffic. I did not read in the report that there was any recommendation before us that fully pedestrianize the roadway all year round, seasonal or otherwise, that there was always the availability of through traffic for necessary trips with respect to delivery vehicles or perhaps passenger vehicles. Is that not the intention of even their operation that was laid over concept D or C, that there was always going to be available access for vehicles when needed?
That is correct, Councillor Wong-Tam, and I think it's a little bit confusing perhaps for people to think of operations of the street as flexible. One of the things we know about Yonge Street is that it is a place where a lot of people gather. We wanted to reflect what we heard from many, many stakeholders about the flexibility of using the street for different configurations, different time of day, different day of week. And so that's one of the things that went into the initial assessment of operational plan that we'll continue to work on. But right now, the physical design allows for through movement of vehicles 24/7 as we need to.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there additional questions of staff? Councillor Leighton.
Yes, thank you very much. Through the chair, just really quickly on the stakeholder group, could you just take us back and tell us and talk us through what the process of consultation has been, in particular with respect to the stakeholder group, but also if you want to touch on the larger community dialogue.
I mean,
Thanks for the question,
yes,
Councillor.
Yep, go ahead.
Thanks for the question, Councillor. The chair, round one of public consultation on this project began in July of 2018 with the first stakeholder advisory group meeting and continued through 3 phases, with the first round being finalized in May of 2019, a second round public consultation in July 2019, culminating in November 2019, and a third round that really took place in 2020 with concluding with property and business meetings early in 2020 and a public consultation presentation in the fall of 2020. That involved several meetings with the stakeholder advisory group, which included members of the community from both property owners as well as representatives from community organizations. And there were robust conversations with the stakeholder advisory group about the needs of the adjacent properties and the future vision of the street. Our intention, though, is that stakeholder advisory group process is by no means complete and needs to continue through the detailed design, because there isn't consensus from all stakeholders on how the street should operate. And we acknowledge that we need to work further with the stakeholders to come up with a recommended design concept of the operations plan that has more support from local stakeholders.
So just very quickly to clarify, the BIA was part of that stakeholder group, as was the residents associations, WalkTO, organizations like that.
That's correct. It included a wide range of property owners, managers, and community organizations like residents associations and community groups like WalkTO.
And we heard from the BIA that they had voiced some opposition to what was proposed at the in the final report here. But is it also safe to conclude that some of the other stakeholder groups weren't exactly getting everything that they would have wanted out of the report?
Yes, certainly. The physical design, I think, had the most consensus in terms of the level of support from various stakeholders. It's the operational pieces that some stakeholders are happy with and others are not, and there's a wide range of opinion on all sides of the spectrum on that, and it's something that we know we need to work more deeply with the adjacent property managers and users and community organizations to get an operational plan that has support.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Leighton. Are there additional questions of staff? Deputy Mayor?
Yeah. So I'm listening to the deputants, Madam Chair, and and what I hear is that there's general agreement and support for pedestrian improvements, but there is substantial, significant, and strong opposition about elimination of 2 lanes on Yonge Street. And, you know, because, Madam Chair, they're coming from, by and large, you know, some of the biggest
Yes,
landlords, as well as small ones on Yonge Street.
We're on questions of staff.
I know, this is a preface to my question. There's a lot of opposition to that. My question is this: is it possible to make pedestrian improvements, while not as dramatic? Can we make pedestrian improvements to Yonge Street without taking out 2 lanes of traffic?
Through the chair, there really isn't space to provide more space for pedestrians without taking out lanes of traffic. The lanes on Yonge Street are not overly wide as some.
Madam Chair, I didn't ask. I'm sorry. She's missing Miss Hayward has misheard my question. I didn't talk about the space. I said, are there pedestrian improvements that can be made on Yonge Street without, I'm not finished, please, Madam Chair, without taking out those 2 lanes of traffic? And for example, because I don't agree with where the answer was going, the thing that they were doing with the curbs, that's arguably a pedestrian improvement. It doesn't get you like the full thing that's being proposed in this. It's more modest, but you know, it's still a pedestrian improvement as an example. Ms. Gray, can you comment on, maybe you can understand where I'm going with this?
Yes, Deputy Mayor, through the chair. So certainly there are always improvements that we can make related to safety. I do think that they are going to be quite modest and limited, as you described, if we do not have the ability to expand the sidewalk area. What we learned from this discussion is that the predominance of people who are down in this area using Yonge Street are pedestrians. We have a significant issue in terms of being able to fit those pedestrians on the existing sidewalks with the width that they have right now. And so that is why, and I think while we may not have complete consensus, we have probably the most strong support amongst the advisory group in terms of making significant improvements for safety and access for pedestrians. And so that's why the proposal has been to expand the sidewalks. And to do that, we do need to take lanes.
Just one other, it's a real short one. Is there because the report only it primarily focuses on the recommended option. And there were a number of options in the environmental assessment. Is there one that captures, doing some pedestrian enhancements without taking out the 2 lanes of traffic?
Through the chair, we certainly started, I believe, with 20 options, but I believe that the ones that got shortlisted, if you will, through the process, I believe there were 3 that ultimately got it slimmed down to 3 options. I believe that all of them went to an expanded sidewalk with 2 lanes. Jacqueline will correct me if I'm wrong. There might have been one in there that's not.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Are there additional questions of staff? Councillor Pasternak?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to staff, I'm just looking at the budget here. I guess it's on page 3. It says $70.5 million, but it only lists detailed design, utility relocations, lighting, and water main renewal. It doesn't talk about sidewalk expansion, sidewalk reconstruction, repaving and restoring. Is that extra or that's embedded in this price?
Thanks for the question, Councillor. And Deputy Mayor, I apologize for mishearing your question earlier. On the cost estimate side, Councillor Pasternak, the cost of state of good repair improvement is included within that budget.
So it would include, it's all in. It's the sidewalks, it's the road reconstruction, the repaving, and the other utility relocations, lighting.
That's correct. We've gone to a certain percent level of detailed design, and so we have a level of confidence in that costing.
So there's 10.7 million coming from Section 37. Is that a local reserve account from development in the area, or is that a citywide account, or?
It is. It's development within the immediate area directed at improving pedestrian space in Yonge Street corridor.
So one thing I found is that pedestrians and cyclists seem to like the plan, and the business community does not. Is that reflective of the public consultations that you conducted?
I would say that we did hear quite a bit of support from the business community around improving the pedestrian experience. You heard from Great Eagle as a developer, for example, earlier, that expressed a great deal of support in reducing the number of lanes on Yonge from 4 to 2 and improving the pedestrian space. A lot of the business feedback that we heard was more operational in nature, and we're committed to working through the consultation process going forward to address further concerns.
Opted, how much can change between here and rollout and design? I mean, how much more can really change if you're going to be listening to the business community?
I think a lot of the business concerns, Councillor, was about potential concepts for operations that included pedestrian zones for certain hours, that included turning restrictions at particular intersections through movement restrictions. Those are the kind of things that we need to work more deeply with stakeholders on to understand and also understand the needs of the business environment as we respond and recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. Because we don't want to put forward an operations plan that would be that would seem detrimental to local business at the present time.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Pasternak. Are there any additional questions of staff? Okay, seeing none, I have 2 quick questions. My first question is, why is an EA even needed for this? We don't always see an EA being needed for transportation items.
Thank you, Chair. Anytime that we go for a lane reduction, we are required to do an environmental assessment.
Okay, thank you. And my second...
clarify that, Councillor, just to add, when there's a permanent reconfiguration to the traffic capacity of the street through reconstruction, that's what triggers the EA. Because it's more than operational in nature.
Thank you. And then my second question is, how many more pedestrians have we had over the last decade or so, and how many more are anticipated? So, for example, my community, we're GO train commuters. People take the GO train in and then walk up from Yonge. And we know the GO train is switching to 15-minute service. There'll be even more people that are coming into the downtown core. So what are the projections that we have for pedestrians?
Over the last 20 years, Councillor, the walking in the area has doubled, which is still a current mode share of 24%. And over that time, you note about transit increases. TTC use in the area has increased to 49%, and regional entry into the core by GO Transit has increased to 41% as well. So with increased residential intensification along the Yonge corridor, that walk experience for people who work within the core, as well as continued commuting into the core and walking on Yonge Street, we expect to continue. But we do want to look at the way that the COVID-19 pandemic changes travel behavior. Mind you, people who live along Yonge Street will continue to rise.
Okay, thank you. Seeing that I was last for questions, we'll move to speakers. And we'll go with our visiting speaker first, Councillor Wong Tam.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to staff for the presentation and to all the deputants who either called in or perhaps sent emails. I actually was really just impressed with the volume of engagement. To the transportation staff and the consultants who are probably listening on the call and those who answer the questions, I just want to convey, first of all, thank you Thank you to you for all the work that you've done. I recognize that it's a Herculean effort to be able to wade through the wide range of varied positions, but also to actively listen to what the stakeholders are looking for. And I think that what's important for us today, Madam Speaker, is for us to consider what is before us. The recommendation from the staff report is really to just adopt the physical design of the roadway and how it's going to be rebuilt after we go through the necessary construction to replace a 140-year-old critical piece of water infrastructure that is failing. So one way or the other, we are going to have to live through this construction. The question before us, Madam Speaker, is whether or not we put the roadway back in exactly the same configuration as we found it, with the narrow, inadequate sidewalks with the 4 lanes of traffic, which is perhaps what some people are suggesting, is that don't change too much, maybe plant a tree or change the paver, but put back the 4 lanes of traffic. That is not a viable option, not for the 21st century, and not for a city with a downtown core that is anticipating the residential and employment growth cluster to double by 2041. Already throughout the staff report, there were recommendations that it is woefully inadequate, the sidewalk widths, the substandard conditions of where we ask vulnerable road users, and we need to be able to refine that work. So I'm very pleased with the recommendations from the staff report, because I think that it actually gets us to a good place. We are forward thinking and front facing now with this report. How we actually overlay that with the operational pieces afterwards, which of course will not be available to us until 2023 after another 2 years of robust consultation, that will be done in almost a post-COVID era, I'd like to think optimistically, because there are a lot of things that we no longer know. Are we going to have the same type of teleworking environment as we do today in COVID? Are we going to see the employment clusters come back? We would like to think so, but we need to be able to adapt and change to that. My prediction, Madam Speaker, is that we're going to see downtown Toronto roar back, as I think Martin Rayer has noted, but he also wisely stated that it is going to take some time for us to recover, and that is going to be the economic reality. Part of our recovery effort, I believe, in the downtown core is to build a more vibrant, more inclusive, more beautiful and competitive street. So therefore, we are going to be competitive with other areas in the city, but also other areas in the region and within the North American context. So I just want to be able to speak to those points, Madam Speaker. I recognize my time is up, but also to state that we do have some very broad support from the business community who also wrote letters submitting that support. I'm just going to note a few of them because I think it's important. And that includes Canderel, Mod Development, Center Court Development, Concord, ADEX, Kilmore, and Dream, prominent landowners and developers on the street. And I think that list will continue to grow because they're heavily invested in the street along with the area residents and the businesses for the years to come. None of these folks are leaving tomorrow. They're all committed to Yonge Street, as am I as a local councillor, but also as an area resident. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Wong Tam. Additional speakers? Councillor Cole?
Yes, as Councillor Wong Tam said, this is a Herculean task that's been underway and will continue to be underway, as again precipitated by the fact that we have to replace that water main that was put in what, 1879, I think, is the year. So we have no choice but to do that, and as a result of that, it's an opportunity to look at the future of Yonge Street to 2079. And so maybe that's what this is all about. So there's no simple way of doing this. It's all going to require all kinds of ongoing consultation, planning, advice, and listening to people. And I was impressed by the fact that a lot of the business interests, small business and Cadillac Fairview, they had a legitimate concern about what is it going to do to their business, especially in light of that we're in this pandemic world here. But on the other hand, it is an opportunity really to start to look at Yonge Street for the decades ahead. And I think we've got to do it in a forward-thinking way. But listening to people that have raised these legitimate concerns, and I hope the ongoing consultation about the removal of what business people see as their source of income, is the traffic into the area, that be continued to look at in a very, very meaningful way. And I know Councillor Wong-Tam will continue to do that, and I just think that's got to be an ongoing process. I've from the beginning said that this pandemic is not a short hit. I remember people saying, oh, well, they'll be over in 2 months, 1 month. I think we're into this pandemic reality for the years to come. So what we see downtown there in the towers is going to change dramatically. People have successfully worked from home, and many of them are going to continue to work from home. So maybe a lot of those towers are going to be turned into residential, the business towers. And I think we should be cognizant of that and plan for that. And that is why there are going to be more people walking on the street, more people spending time on their local main street, which is Yonge Street, than ever before, because there's going to be this pandemic reality of people working different, living differently. And we have to plan that way. And I think that this proposal of reimagining Yonge takes that into account, really, maybe accidentally, but it's really a part of the pandemic planning reality we have to face everywhere, that this thing isn't going to go away. And with all the variants and all the mutations, and we've got to include this type of dramatic impact on our city that the pandemic is causing in all the infrastructure work we do. And we can't talk about, well, recovery. Yeah, we all want recovery. But this pandemic isn't going away, folks. So we've got to take into account that there's going to be different dynamics and how people walk, live, recreate in our city. And I think this plan does, I think, fit that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. Additional speakers? Deputy Mayor?
Yes, thanks. I have a motion. Refer the report from the General Manager of Transportation Services back to staff to report back on July 5th, 2021 meeting of the Infrastructure Environment Committee on an alternative that enhances pedestrian features and does not remove full lanes of traffic. Madam Chair, this is an interesting debate. 54 deputants, I really didn't know what they were all going to say. What struck me as very interesting was the tone of how upset and opposed the businesses were to these changes. And I was trying to sort of parse this out and think about what was going on. And I think there are three different groups of people. So the first group are the people that live downtown, and they want these changes to take place because they can walk downtown because they live downtown. So they're self-interested to, keeping cars out of, removing more cars. And that's why, and making it harder to travel downtown, because that's, that suits their interest. And that's why we see, that more congestion from King Street, University, Bloor, Wellesley, all the bike lanes that have been put in that have, when you combine them all clog traffic and discourage people from coming downtown. The second group of people are the businesses, and I think it's fair to say that they've got a little bit more invested, some hundreds of millions of dollars in what happens to Yonge Street, and then you have the small businesses. The gentleman who deputed at the beginning from Salad King, who was telling us a very personal story about this, what this will do to his business, and I think we have to listen to him. And we heard from the advertisers, and they're just, they know about, eyes on the street. They know who's on that street because they have to know. It's their business. And then there are the anchor groups like the Eaton Center. And what would the downtown be without the Eaton Center? We cannot just ignore them either. And then the third group of people, which I think in some ways are represented by these businesses, are the people that want to come downtown that aren't coming downtown. And when you make these changes and you make it even harder for them to come downtown, they're not going to come anymore. And fundamentally, and some people, some members of council may not want to hear this. Yonge Street belongs to all of us. It's not a local issue. Councillor Cole in Eglinton, you have residents that want to come down. Councillor Prutza, people in your ward want to come down and shop. Chair McKelvey, out in Scarborough, how many people go down to the Eaton Centre when they want to do their Christmas shopping? We all have an interest in this, and not everybody can walk downtown, and you can't take your family of 5 down to take transit every time you want to come downtown. So we all have a vested interest in this, as does Councillor Leighton, who's shaking his head. So where I see the difference is everybody will support the enhanced pedestrian features, but where there's actually a fundamental disagreement is on these 2 lanes, taking out these lanes of traffic. And I asked staff if they'd come up with an alternative just to do, albeit more modest, pedestrian enhancements. Do the pedestrian enhancements without removing the lanes. It's certainly not going to be as aggressive as some members of the public and some members of council may envision. It will be more modest, but I'd like to see it because, quite frankly, the report as it's presented today leaves a significant and I think important group of people and businesses who've invested the great sums of money, and a lot of members of the public who, from the report, aren't deciding to come downtown anymore because they don't want the aggro, and we shouldn't have that approach where we're discouraging them not to come downtown anymore. So this is an arrangement. I can't support the report as it is, and that's why I'm hoping that we can send it back and come up with an alternative that might make some of the people that are so upset about this a little bit more accepting.
Okay, thank you. Are there questions of the mover? Councillor Wong-Tam?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Through you to the Deputy Mayor, with respect to the motion, if we were to do nothing other than to just perhaps try to improve the existing sidewalk conditions with what we currently have, we don't even need an EA based on your referral. Because you're saying to leave the lanes of traffic exactly as is, 4 lanes, don't do anything, and then ask staff to do some landscape work and come back to the next IEC committee. Is that what your recommendation is?
No.
Can you explain to me how it's not that?
I didn't. So what I'm proposing is seeing what we can do. I'm not, maybe the lanes, I'm not sure. Maybe this is true. Maybe it's not. Maybe you can make the lanes a little bit skinnier. I don't know what the width of the lanes are. And I'm not saying it's just simply landscaping. Maybe you can do some curb work. Maybe there are things other than just, there are other things that we can do just in simply landscaping. And I'm not, I don't need to go through an environmental assessment, some legal process to make those improvements, but this is an arrangement where instead of thumbing our noses at all those businesses and all those people that think this is a bad idea, trying to find an arrangement that, it may not make everybody happy, but where we'll find some improvements. And I think that we do have, given the timeline that's available to us, that this won't happen for, it's not imminently going to happen this year, that we have some time to think about this.
Thank you. I don't think that is correct. I don't think we do have a lot of time. And the reason being is because we have to bundle this with the infrastructure work for the water main. But a follow-up question for you, Deputy Mayor, is with respect to the folks that you are advocating for today. I heard only 2 speakers today that advocated for the retention of the 4 lanes of traffic, only 2. Branded Cities as well as Cadillac Fairview. Are those the two parties that you're advocating for by way of this motion to bring back 4 lanes of traffic onto Yonge Street?
Madam Chair, I'm advocating for thousands and thousands of people who would like to shop downtown and who are concerned about the increasing congestion in the downtown core.
But for the speakers who spoke today, Deputy Mayor, I only heard 2 speakers, and that was Mr. Ray and Mr. Seaman, both from Cadillac Fairview and Branded Cities. Those were the only 2 proponents who said leave the 4 lanes of traffic as is, the street functions just fine. Is that not correct? Did you hear that as well?
Madam Chair, I do not make the foundational mistake that the councillor may make in just simply listening to deputations. I listen to a lot more other people and try and represent the whole entire city on what I believe are city-wide projects.
Madam Speaker, thank you.
Thank you. Are there additional questions of the mover? Okay, would anybody like to speak to the referral? Councillor Leighton?
I'll be very brief because I'm quite convinced that this referral won't pass. Please don't vote for this referral. Doing nothing isn't an option here. It was considered as part of the EA. Perhaps the deputy mayor could look back and actually look at some of the material that was presented, because I know he didn't attend those meetings. I don't expect him to. But the reality is that most stakeholders, as well as the communities in the area, and I believe across the city, actually support this move. I believe it's balanced and measured. It gives us an opportunity to talk about the operational aspects, which I would prefer to talk about now, but I see there's being some value in continuing that dialogue. But we should be moving ahead with the EA now. It has been years in the making. The staff have studied to death the different options. And one of them was exactly what the deputy mayor has brought forward, and that's the do nothing option, as it's considered in all environmental assessments. So I would urge you to reject the motion in front of you and proceed to vote on the item.
Thank you, Councillor Leighton. Does anybody else speak? Councillor Pasternak?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I will be supporting the Deputy Mayor's motion. It is true that we only had a small number of deputants that spoke overtly about the damage that this could cause to our local economic community, but they in fact represented thousands of businesses. The downtown Yonge VIA represents more than 2,000 businesses, and the Eaton Centre is a major tourist attraction. It not only has a wide selection of retail, but also dozens of businesses in their office towers. So in fact, the voices that have come today have raised concern, represent thousands of businesses, and of course, tens of thousands of people who work there. It's important to remember that when a business closes, it's not just the business owner that suffers, who may have put his life savings into the business, may have mortgaged his house, may have taken out large loans, may have signed personal guarantees. But in many of these businesses, particularly in food and beverage, the poorest of the poor lose their jobs. And that is a major setback for our community. At the end of the day, I think we have to find a balance here, and sending it back for a sober second look is prudent, it's responsible, and gives us a chance to really digest some of the things before us and kind of decipher through some of the contradictions that also exist, the disconnect between what's written in the report and some of the correspondence we've seen. So I would encourage you to support it. Deferral.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else to speak on the item? Okay, I appreciate the concerns of the Deputy Mayor. I won't be voting for referral. This is starting an EA, which also has consultation, and so there is still additional options. The do nothing option is usually included in that EA, and it would be a consideration of this EA, which would get ministerial approval. I think there is consensus that we need to widen the sidewalks. It is very unsafe, and While we're not building additional parking in the downtown core, we are increasing GO train service considerably. We're increasing the number of condominiums that are around the area, and we can expect that the number of pedestrians is going to increase very rapidly over the next decade. So I won't be voting in support of this referral because we do need to get going with this item. The water mains are quite old, and we need to decide on the location of the sidewalks so that detailed design can happen for both the road, but also so that Toronto Water can start planning. So with that, we'll move to the vote. You going to pull it up? Apologies for pulling it up. Here's the motion for referral. We'll move to vote. Apologies, I'm just waiting for my screen to change. All those in favor of referral? All those opposed? The motion for referral does not carry. We move back to speakers on the item. Additional speakers on the item. Councillor Leighton.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'd first like to thank City staff for their work on this. They did put a lot of energy and resources into ensuring that this was done right. It's a complex neighborhood with it complex needs, as well as a variety of different stakeholders. Because as Councillor Minimong said, it's not a local issue. It's not solely a local issue, but there are a lot of people involved locally that didn't have the benefit of participating in this dialogue here today. But I think that what the Deputy Mayor got dead wrong was the direction that we're being sent in by both the public as well as by our own city policies and goals. I'd also like to thank Councillor Wong Tam for all of her work on this, for the years of leadership that she's given this file. Again, with a complex set of relationships here, there are political complexities that Councillor Minimong has done very well in managing throughout the process, along with staff. Listen, I think that there are two fundamental things that we need to recognize during this debate. Once, that this is a once in a generation, maybe once in a century opportunity to redesign Toronto's iconic street. And then second, that making these changes is actually key to fulfilling some of the key city objectives that have taken up an enormous, probably the bulk of our time over the last 2 years, and certainly maybe in the last 10 years that I've been in office. So first, on the once in a generational opportunity, we are digging up this entire road, right? We're going to dig it up to replace a water main, and then what are we going to replace it with? We don't want to do this work twice. So we have to look forward as to what our needs will be 10, 15, 20 years down the road. And when you look at that, and what they're doing in other cities is going along this route of pedestrianizing some of their core shopping streets. And it doesn't take long to look at some of the long-standing examples, like the Strogan in Copenhagen. 1962, that work was done. And yes, it was met with opposition, but just 2 years after the trial, it was met with open arms. They had the exact same debates we're having here today, with some business owners from higher end businesses saying, this can't be done, this can't be done. The reality is it's happening all over the world. And the second is key to fulfilling our city objectives. Vision Zero, Transform TO, our downtown secondary plan, all of them hinge on projects like this. I want to make one more observation. Just based on one of the the deputations that were that was made by the folks from the Eaton Center. They have 1,300 parking spaces. Yorkdale has 8,000, roughly the same size, roughly the same sales figures. But Eaton Center has 50 million visitors a year. 50 million. Yorkdale has 18 million. At 50 million, it's the mall in North America with the highest volume of people. Yet they have 15% of the parking of Yorkdale. So how are people getting there? Well, a recent study by the Retail Council of Canada, which did a scan of Canadian shopping centers in 2017, determined and highlighted that it's town population and transit access that are driving successful downtown malls. It's not parking spaces. We have to separate the two. Because in people's brains, and perhaps it's like Councillor Min Wong and Councillor Pasternak, they've worked to ingrain the two, that cars are the ones doing the shopping. But we see from the example that the Retail Council of Canada has put forward, it's not at all. They're not connected. People shop. So if you make areas more conducive to people, people will come. And I would like to dispute the observation that Councillor Min Wong made that billboards are making the area exciting. They have nothing to do with making that area exciting. You can't listen to the lobbyists. It's not about this notion that those that are advocating for a better pedestrian domain are doing it for themselves. You have to get away from that, Mr. Deputy Mayor. It's about them doing.
Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. That's 5 minutes. I'd like to move a motion to extend. Motion to extend first. Motion to extend first. I'll move that. All in favor of extending? Okay, thank you. Now we can move to to Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I think that Councillor Leighton misheard me because I never said in my comments today that advertising was exciting. So I'd ask him to withdraw that, please.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Leighton, would you like to rephrase?
Well, I believe if we actually turn back, I didn't say advertising. You said that the billboards would take away from the excitement of the area.
But I didn't. The characterization that I said the billboards are advertising or exciting, Madam Chair, is incorrect.
I never said advertising. I said your observation made earlier was that by reducing the billboards, that would take away from the excitement of the area.
I never said that.
Thank you. Councillor Leighton, have you clarified and rephrased accordingly?
I'm sorry, was that to me?
Yes, I think you rephrased what you were saying there.
That the observation made while questioning the lobbyist on behalf of the billboard industry was that the loss of that industry in the area would make it less exciting. That is how the Deputy Mayor Min Wong characterized his comments to the lobbyist.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I disagree with that, but we'll leave those. I'm happy to leave those misrepresentations as they are.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, now maybe we should get the clerk to replay the tape, Councillor Min.
I think Deputy Mayor has agreed that in the interest of time, he will let his concern go. We thank him immensely for that in the interest of moving the meeting forward. Additional speakers to this item. Councillor Pasternak.
Yes, no, thank you very much. Advertising can be annoying, but it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and without billboards, our arts community would collapse. No fan of tacky advertising, but I should point out a visit to Times Square may be probably the best educational tool one can use when debating illuminated billboards in squares. I'll preface my comments by saying that, I supported bike lanes in the area I represent. We work very hard to bring bike share up to York Centre. Whenever the weather's suitable and safe, I do bike to my community office and to to appointments when in the pre-pandemic world. And I support it as a mode of transportation. I support it as a form of exercise. And I support greater safeties for vulnerable road users. But I am concerned about our economic vitality. I am concerned about our economy. And I am concerned about the battering that stores have taken over the last 9 months or so. And believe me, we take, councillors, we know we take the calls of people who are barely hanging on. And I can't imagine the thought of lying at night knowing that your store is on the verge of going under, whether to remortgage your home or take out a personal line of credit or sell something to keep the store going, whether you pack it in or keep it going. And although there weren't a lot of voices on today's deputation list, they represented thousands of businesses. And they're deeply concerned because businesses need stability, and they don't normally like instability. And the access to and from their store, whether it's goods or services, or whether it's paying customers, they need that security of knowing that people can come and go from their stores very quickly. I know that the part of this debate was talking about parking spots, and I believe my notes here about 1,400 parking spots that are at the Eaton Centre, and that those are a small fraction of the people who are coming. But 1,400 cars, and it may be more than that. I don't know how many people stay there the whole day. It may be 2,500 cars with 2 to 3 people in each, and a trunk to load up high-end goods with high margins. This is a crucial part of the retail sector, to have people who are coming down. That could be 3,000 to 4,000 people a day coming down and buying products that can only be transported by car, high-end products. And at the same time, that it produces revenue through parking. I assume it's not free. And that it's important, very important to have. So with that, I think more work has to be done on that. We'll continue to monitor this closely. But in the interim, I don't think this can go forward as is. I'm deeply concerned about recovery and our economy and the vitality of the Eaton Centre and its surrounding neighborhoods and road system. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Pasternak. Any additional speakers? I believe I'm the last speaker then. I do have a motion. So the motion is asking for a supplementary report to council that just has some clarifications on what it is that we're approving through this environmental assessment process, outlining what the next steps are for detailed design, operations planning, and construction, and summarizing the next steps for consultation and engagement. In addition, item 2 is asking that the General Manager of Transportation Services be made available to brief stakeholders, including downtown young business improvement areas, about the environmental assessment process and what it is that we are approving here today. There is a waterwork from 1889 that needs to be upgraded. Toronto Water needs to be able to do that design work, and to do that, they need to know where the curbs are going to be located. That triggers an EA process that could be lengthy, and that we need to get started here today by approving this item and moving it on into council. I think that there's a lot of different views on this, as you would expect, given the varied nature of the stakeholders that are involved. But I think there is a large consensus that we do need to improve the pedestrian realm. We have more pedestrians on Yonge Street than were ever anticipated, and that number is going to grow very quickly over the next few decades, and we need to be able to revitalize the street in a way that accommodates that and keeps people safe. So I am supporting the staff recommendations that are brought forward here today so that we can get the environmental assessment process started. Thank you. And seeing no other speakers, we'll move to vote on the amendment and then on the item. Okay, we'll vote on the amendment that is before us once the screen changes back. All those in favor? All those opposed? The amendment carries. Vote on the item. All those in favor? All those opposed? Item carries to council. That brings us back. We can go back through the agenda. I believe Councillor Fletcher is now online. I just want to go back quickly to 19.7. Councillor Leighton, you had acknowledged that your questions had been answered, or do you need to continue to hold this item?
No, I had my questions answered offline, so I'm prepared to just move ahead with the item.
Okay, would you like to move the item?
I prefer someone else move. I'd prefer someone else.
I am happy to move the item. All those in favor? All those opposed? That item carries. We'll move back then to item 19.10. Councillor Fletcher has joined us again. She has questions for Derek Toigo. He's
Yes.
on the line.
Madam Chair, I'm on the line.
Thank you for joining us. Councillor Fletcher, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I was just asking earlier, Mr. Toigo, about the, is that, sorry, a WebEx noise, about the request that City Council made to look at the impact of the above ground Ontario line on the 6 bridges that have to be remediated in order to achieve an above ground line, and the impact on all of the transit that uses those particular streets, that most particularly be Gerrard, where there's 2 bridges, and Queen Street, and Eastern, which has a bus, and then on traffic in the neighborhood. So I don't know where that sits. And if you can tell us if you understand that impact yet.
So through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor. Councillor, we are, as we indicated previously, we are going to be working with our colleagues in Transportation Services to get a study started in Q1. The outcome of that study, and we are working with your office to make sure that any sort of motion that would come out of this, or any sort of information that would come out of this, would actually be incorporated into the EA by Metrolinx. So we're one is that this report will commence in this quarter, and then the second one will be that once the report is completed, we intend to make Metrolinx incorporate this information within their EA. Does that answer the question?
It does, but I think this was asked for last year. Was it asked for last November or this October? Do you recall?
It was probably October, November. We've been in council on numerous occasions. So either October or November. You're probably correct.
2020 or 2019?
2020, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry. Are you interrupting?
Yeah. I'm sorry, Councillor Fletcher. It's Barbara Gray from Transportation. I was just going to say that.
I thought it was the chair. I thought it was the chair.
Oh, sorry. So through the chair to you. I just wanted to talk just briefly about some of the impacts to the transportation staff and Roger Brown's team that have, I think, delayed part of the modeling work related to some of this analysis on construction impacts overall. And so we'll be working to move that forward as quickly as we can. I think if the delay exists, it's probably because we've had to reprioritize and reassign staff to cover off some of the other programs that happened during the pandemic. So that might allow or explain a little bit of the delay.
I thought we were hiring a consultant.
Yes, that consultant needs to be monitored and overseen by traffic staff, and modeling needs to happen as well. So
sorry, but if I can just get back to this issue of the one of the uses of this impact study is to look at whether or not it's really feasible or practical to have an above ground line with 6 bridges and that much transit. And that would actually inform the EA. So are you telling me that we're going to give this information to Metrolinx for their EA, which is an above ground line? Or are we trying to have this information in order for Metrolinx to perhaps revisit its position on the above ground Ontario line? I think they're very far ahead on that, and they don't have any impact from the city. Sorry, somebody's got something going on here. It's making it very hard to hear.
So through you, Madam Chair, the intent of to you, Councillor, the intent of this was to determine what the impact was, as you've suggested. Try to get a better understanding of what would happen to these structures, what impact it would have on the city, and then for us to make sure that Metrolinx understood that these impacts could potentially, create a problem for us. So the idea would be that we would share this information with them so that they can address this, because they're the only ones that can address this.
Yes, except that is one of the things. Have we not asked them clearly that we would like to
That's
have
the end of your questions, unfortunately.
Can
but
I finish that question or not? Since I've waited all morning.
Oh, well, how about we do a second round?
Sure.
Okay. Additional questions?
I think Councillor Cole has some, but maybe not.
Councillor Cole?
Yes. In terms of what is taking place here with this item here is asking to give authority to staff to delegate authority to come into agreement with Metrolinx to close pedestrian and vehicle traffic on highways or portion of highways for up to 365 days.
10 years.
Ending before December 2030. How do we ensure that the local communities, the local businesses are properly consulted and compensated for possible 10 years of road closings?
So I can start with that, Councillor Cole. I mean, this report, to the chair, this report is certainly something that is not very different, except for the locations, that Transportation Services has the delegated authority to close these roads for specific permitted work that Metrolinx brings forward to us or their consultants as part of their infrastructure program that they deliver. So it is a long time frame. The reason why we put the first one of these in place a number of years ago, as I understand, is because we were having to write a report to the community council each and every time that a project was going forward. Instead, we have a staff, and I think you've met Navi Taskar, who works for Ashley Curtis, who work deliberately with Metrolinx and the Transit Expansion Office and the local councillors when these programs come forward to minimize the closures. And we've had some issues that have cropped up. I think you know that for sure, that we've had some issues, and so we continue to refine that process. But it is really just to not have us come back to council every time that we need to do what typically is a relatively temporary closure. And I don't know if Ashley wants to or needs to add anything to that.
Have we ever done this for 10 years before, given essentially delegated authority to staff for 10 years?
Through the chair, yes. The Scarborough, we have delegated authority for the Scarborough Subway project, which also runs through till December 2030.
The Scarborough Subway, which section is that now?
It's the Scarborough Subway extension. So we came forward in April 2019 to seek council delegated authority for that, and that delegated authority ran from that period through to December 2030.
Okay. And another question for our general manager, Barbara Gray. Has there ever been any compensation given to small businesses for the obstruction and construction and the removal of parking and the blocking of stores as a result of all this construction by Metrolinx? Has there ever been any compensation given to small businesses who've been, in many cases, in my ward, I've got 150 businesses closed because of the Eglinton Crosstown. Not one of them has got 1 cent from Metrolinx. Do you know of any compensation that's come from the province to small businesses?
Through the chair, I can certainly let Derek weigh in here as well. Certainly, we've worked previously with economic development and culture in doing our best to support businesses. As I know, Metrolinx has a program as well to support businesses. I don't believe it's financial support. But again, the work that we're doing now, I know we just launched, I believe at Council's direction, a little Jamaica economic development study that we'll be working on to figure out ways to help support businesses.
So through you, Madam Chair, if I could add, Councillor, in discussions, we have raised this continuously with Metrolinx. Metrolinx confirms back to us that there are provisions within the project agreement, which is the contract between them and Project Co, to deal with issues of what they call injurious affection, which is impacts to businesses and closures that they may be experiencing. So it is, there is a process in place that Metrolinx has. They've confirmed it to us that they have a process that allows businesses to make a claim to them, and then the claim is investigated so that a proper compensation can be provided.
Do you know of any compensation? I do not know of 1 cent that has gone to Little Jamaica,
you're
Eglinton
past
West.
time on questions, but we may be going to another round. Are there any additional questions of staff? Just waiting for the screen to change. Additional questions of staff? Okay, is it the will that we do one more round so Councillor Fletcher and Councillor Cole can finish? All those in favor? Carries. Okay, Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you. Thank you very much. On this one, I've just, my staff have kindly determined that it was October 2019 that this request was made for the study on the 6 bridges. And just to confirm, I think some of them belong to the city, these bridges, and some of them belong to Metrolinx. And some of them, I believe most of them are at least 100 years old. Could someone confirm that? The age of the bridges, or if you don't know the answer, I think that would come out in this report. And that I'm just really clear. I guess I just would like to ask our deputy city manager if I can, because I'm really unclear as to if this material is being developed in order to inform Metrolinx about the route, which is the best way to go, above ground or underground. So I think that's why I moved that motion. I'm unclear as to if that is the role of the report. It doesn't sound like it to me. That's the first thing. And second, have we made it really clear to Metrolinx that the city's preferred alternative is to run this 1 kilometer stretch underground? Sorry, can you hold my time, please, Speaker, Chair?
Yeah, I think you had your questions were directed at Tracy, right? Tracy Cook?
Yeah, because they're kind of overarching, particularly the one about Metrolinx.
She is on the line.
Sounds like she's got a bad connection there.
No, Tracy Cook. Is somebody else able to answer the question while we're trying to get Tracy?
Okay, then I guess it's Mr. Toigo. You're stepping into those robes that she wears. Go ahead.
So through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, we continue to advocate to Metrolinx with regards to the alignment and how it's running and the impact it's going to have on the community, and we want them to provide the information that you've asked for on numerous occasions.
Have you asked that it goes underground?
Sorry?
Have you asked it goes underground?
We have asked them to confirm kind of what their rationale was for running it above ground and to run it below ground.
Would it be helpful if the city had a very clear position? I was hoping to have this material on the 6 bridges to make it a little clearer, but if the city had an extremely clear position about below ground. Will that help you?
Councillor, the issue that we face right now is that, and I'm sure that you're aware of it, is that there is a regulation that has made the responsibility for the delivery of the subway projects, they're priority projects for the province.
No, I understand all of that, but they're asking, they need to attach 6 bridges, 6 flankages onto our bridges. They need to close they need to do a lot of things that are very different than any other part of any other transit project. And the impact will be quite significant. So I think that is the issue here with Metrolinx. It's not their priority, it's establishing our priority with them, whether they agree or not. But I think we have not given the evidence or established our priority clearly enough, apparently.
No, so Councillor, we continue, as I said before, we continue to push on, like you're correct, they are going to be impacting numerous structures within your ward, and we've asked them to do the necessary investigations to provide to us the necessary information that allows us to see how, like, what rationale they used for going above grade. That
Correct.
Reporting that we are preparing with our colleagues in Transportation Services is in order to do our own assessment of this and to...
Right.
Yeah.
But the issue about having an impact on the neighborhood, there is a tremendous impact on city infrastructure, tremendous impact on city infrastructure. And we're preparing here to give them just a carte blanche for our infrastructure. Does that concern you at all, considering we don't know the impact on our infrastructure?
So again, through you, Madam Chair, anytime that there is an impact to the city, it concerns me, and I've heard your concerns, Councillor. And again, we continue to, as I can only reemphasize, we continue to push on Metrolinx to give us the information that will help support the questions or answer the questions that you are asking.
I guess my point isn't so much, it's just my concerns. Should these not be city concerns as well? 6 bridges,
yes.
6
And that's
all
your
the
final
transportation routes. That isn't just my concern, or this should be a city concern direct. Am I right?
So through you, Madam Chair, yes, we
Thank you. That's all I need to know.
We don't look at it just with respect to your work. We look at it throughout wherever the subway program is going.
Thank you. Councillor Crowell, did you have an additional question, or has that covered your questions?
No, I just haven't had my question answered. Whether General Manager Barbara Gray or Derek Toigo can give me any information that indicates if there's been any compensation given to the businesses that have been affected by 10 years of the Eglinton Crosstown construction by Metrolinx, by the province. Has there been any compensation?
Through you, Madam Chair, to you, Councillor, we have not been privy to any sort of commercial arrangement that's existed between Metrolinx and any one of the businesses, other than the confirmation that Metrolinx has said that they have, through this process that they've established, engaged with businesses to allow them to seek compensation.
So in 10 years of construction of Eglinton, As a result of this process you refer to, are you aware of any compensation that has been given to small business? I certainly have not heard of 1 cent that went to one business as a result of this process.
Through you, Madam Chair, no, I am not aware of any.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I didn't see any other hands up for questions. Speakers on this item?
I'd like to speak.
Okay, Councillor Fletcher, 5 minutes.
I will, and I'll just start, and I probably will talk to you, Councillor Cole, between now and council, because there is a process I know of where that larger corporations use, and PricewaterhouseCoopers is there at the beginning, and that's how they go for compensation. I know that is the way the TTC does it, but it's something that I think the BIA office could be more helpful with in establishing that parameters in order to get that. I'm not aware of any small business that's ever received anything from any large transit project. I do just want to note, and I'm glad you did that, Councillor Cole. You said 10 years, 365 days a year. That's 3,650 days for which we're delegating authority to all of these roads. And I just want to point out, and I thank you for your answers, Mr. Toigo, and I'm glad you were able to be on the call, that these requests that were made, I would not want them to be just my interest to me or my community. I think they need to be of great interest to the city. This elevated what was 2 kilometers and now is 1 kilometer of Ontario line. It does have, I believe, a big impact on city infrastructure. And when I say infrastructure, I'm at the Parks and Environment Committee, and that's exactly transportation and parks will have a great impact from any of this above ground work. As I've noted before, all of the trees, which isn't our subject of conversation here today, that are along the line of the property will all have to be removed, that the walls will come right into the 7 parks. There's only 7 small parks, green spaces running along the tracks, as well as the larger Jimmy Simpson Park. And also on all of the streets, there's 2 transit lines. There are 6 bridges. The bridges are 100 years old. They weren't going to expand the bridges, and then of course found out that's impossible with 100-year-old infrastructure. So they're going to put flankage pieces along them. This is every time you look at, it's like renovating an old house. Every time you pull something back, you find something else you have to do. You find the knob and tube. You didn't know there was knob and tube. You find glued linoleum. You didn't know that was there under the carpet. You find things every time you peel one thing back. And these motions that were requested really are to give the information that's necessary to Metrolinx and as a city position saying, we think these, maybe there's no impact, but I think there will be, including to transit. What do we need to know ourselves in order to be able to advocate strongly for the right model here for the Ontario line? Everybody wants to have this transit line, but the impact of this transit line for 1 kilometer above ground is tremendous, including on businesses. There are 400 businesses at Carlaw and Dickens in zoned employment. That is now in play as a potential site to stage. So while we're looking at designs, we're looking at the impact of construction, we're looking at the impact of staging in a built-up neighborhood that that would require tremendous amount of construction in the neighborhood, on people's property, on parks property, taking parking from the employment zone, impacting those jobs at that 388 Carlaw. So it just seems to me that what seems like a good idea, because there's already tracks there, in adding another 2 tracks to what will be 4, and then eventually they're hoping 6, looks great on paper. But I think our job is to make sure that we have really looked at the impact of the construction, of being able to stage the construction and everything else. I don't think that's happened yet. And I'm hoping that we'll have an update in February 2nd on the infrastructure impact for the Transportation Division. And I believe, Councillor Cole, you're going to be moving a couple of motions on my behalf, and I want to thank you for that. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Other speakers? Councillor Cole, would you like to go next with your motions?
Yes, I have a motion that I'm moving on behalf of Councillor Fletcher. And I think it's just reflecting what Councillor Fletcher has raised. And I think we owe a debt of gratitude to Councillor Fletcher for raising these issues, because I think she's trying to protect the impacted communities as we go for 10 years here. So I would hope you support this motion, asking for essentially consultation and certainly respect of the impact these projects will have on the affected communities. Now, I have another motion too.
They combine them.
Can we read it? Like, it's a long motion, and it's...
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
I mean, I'd ask you what it says, Mike, but I think...
The first 3 are yours, Councillor, and the last 2 are mine, right?
Yeah, they've been combined, Councillor Cole,
Okay.
and they've all been posted on CMP for quite some time as well. They were advance circulated.
Okay, I didn't realize they were combined. Okay, so basically what the combined motions on behalf of Councillor Fletcher and myself are trying to ensure that there is proper consultation over the next 10 years as these major infrastructure projects take place. And, you know, I think some of us have learned certainly a very, very tough lesson from what's happened on Eglinton West as a result of this construction. And we know we all support the infrastructure and the building of subways and LRTs. But on the other hand, there is fallout from this upon the local business. I know earlier we were talking about you know, the impact of closing lanes on Yonge Street. Well, on Eglinton, we've had sidewalks and lanes closed for 10 years. 150 stores closed. So we need to put these safeguards in place just to add another layer of information and another layer of basically protection of the impact of these closures and these parking of construction trailers and construction cranes. So this is something that is really critical, because many of the councillors who might be affected by this, you know, 5 years hence are going to thank us for at least putting a couple of these safeguards in place. And I know staff tries their best to expedite and support the construction of the infrastructure, and Ashley Curtis and others are working nonstop around trying to facilitate this construction and making it work. But on the other hand, there are unpredictable things that happen with construction that are not planned and have dramatic impacts on traffic turning, parking, and also even access to public parks. All these things happen, and so there has to be a few of these safeguards, and that's what this combined motion really tries to do, just to ensure that we have mechanisms that take into account the impact of this construction for the next decade. So it's very, very, I think, serious to give this kind of delegated authority for 10 years, and we have to have some added checks and balances from the lessons we've learned on Eglinton. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coral. Additional speakers to the item? Okay, seeing none, I also have a motion that was put up on CMP at the start of the meeting. It's a technical amendment from staff. So it's deleting recommendation 3, and then in recommendation 2, it is adding Young North Subway. The second motion is deleting the words Young North Subway from recommendation 5. So we can vote on the 2 amendments. So the technical one from staff will come up first. All those in favor? Carries. The second motion from the amendment from Councillor Cole. All those in favor? All those opposed? That item carries. The item as amended. All those in favor? All those opposed? That item carries. That brings us to item 19.12, active TO and accessibility. Deputy Mayor Min Wong, I know you had questions of staff. Deputy Mayor? Deputy Mayor, you are not unmuted.
There. I've got a lot of windows open, so I'm trying to find the right place. Here it is. So this is a request for guidelines to expand the cycling network. Should this not be coming back to the infrastructure committee as opposed to the accessibility committee?
Through the chair, my staff.
No, so I asked the clerk.
Oh, sorry.
Madam Chair, due respect.
He's looking into that for you.
I'm assuming the clerk is thinking.
Yes, he is.
Madam Chair, it looks to me like the request from the Toronto Accessibility Advisory Committee, which is a council advisory body, is a request that the general manager make a presentation at their meeting at some point in the third quarter of 2021. That's how I read that.
Sorry.
So I think the confusion is, I mean, I see what you're saying. So the report could come, they're developing these accessibility guidelines, workshops, and harmonized standards. So the question is, do those come to us as well and then also be presented back? Can we ask, who can we ask that?
The other thing, Madam Chair, if I may, it's more than a presentation. It's developing guidelines.
Correct. So maybe, Barbara, could you just speak to that? What is the plan? Will there be a report back to us with these guidelines in addition to being presented to the Accessibility Advisory Committee?
I mean, yes. So the direction from the Accessibility Advisory Committee was to come with a motion was to come back through Infrastructure and Environment to direct us to develop these guidelines, which we are going to be working on. And they asked specifically that we come back to their committee. So I would assume either pursuant to that or after that, we would brief the council on that as well, on those guidelines.
So I've got a thing on that, Madam Chair. This committee, this standing committee, and this is, I'd appreciate any of the comments from the clerk. In terms of we have the jurisdiction with regard to bike lanes and a cycling network. And it seems to me awkward and in some ways inappropriate if we're going to hold this all together to have something not go through this committee. I don't know if you agree with that, but it seems to make sense to me.
Okay, we're agreed. The clerk can update this motion to that effect. Would you like to move that as an amendment on this then? That the report back is to the Infrastructure and Environment Committee with then a presentation to the Toronto Accessibility Advisory Committee?
That's perfect.
Okay, so we'll update the language on that. Okay, are there any additional questions, staff? Anybody else to speak to this item? Oh, sorry, Councillor Fletcher, go ahead. 5 minutes, questions to staff.
Yes, as an advisory committee, it's my understanding that everything that the advisory committee does has to come back through the parent standing committee. And I'm quite clear about that from our subcommittee on protection of affordable housing. We can't make legislation, we can't do things, we can't make decisions. It all gets reported back for approval at committee. The same with the film board that you were on, Madam Chair, that we can do many things there, but none of it is final. It all goes to the standing committee. In that case, that's Economic Development Committee. And lastly, for the Accessibility Committee, it reports through your committee, and therefore they can initiate things, they can think things up, they can't make them happen without it coming back to committee. So I'm a little concerned about the motion and the way that it's worded. It appears to be taking that purview of the advisory committee, which is to forward policy, to bring thinking forward to the committee, which will either be approved or not approved. But there appears to be maybe a misunderstanding that somehow these advisory committees are out there doing things and making policy. They assist in policy development, but it has to go back to its mother committee, and in which case it's here. So I wouldn't want your committee to do something that was not aligned with the advisory committee role or the intention of advisory committee to assist in that development of policy. That's my 2 cents here today, which I think that motion does actually.
Madam Chair, I think we're all on the same page here. I'm indifferent to if it goes to the Accessibility Committee first, as long as it lands back at the Infrastructure Committee on its way through to Council.
It always has.
Sorry, Madam Chair.
Yeah,
to me,
sorry.
This is not a big deal.
Well, Madam Chair, that is the route. And I think it's important that your committee understands the route of the Accessibility Committee, the same way as Deputy Mayor Thompson understands the route from the film board. There's a route. Nothing can be approved at committee. It's an advisory committee. Everything comes here. And it kind of makes it look like it doesn't by the motion that you're putting forward. And that's all I have to say.
Payments.
And you should know that.
Okay, so based on that then, Deputy Mayor, would you like to move the motion, or would you like to, we can take that?
I haven't even seen the wording of the motion. I mean,
they'll pull it up for you.
I just want to make sure that it can go to the Accessibility Committee. I'm indifferent to that. I just think in terms of holding this all together, I mean, I think just to make Councillor Fletcher happy, she's right, but it shouldn't go from the Accessibility Committee right to Council, which I think she agrees with. Sorry.
Great. Thank you. We have Barbara Gray on the line. Barbara, do we have your commitment? Will you be presenting this to us before it goes to the Accessibility Committee as well, since these are guidelines?
So to you, Chair, typically we go to the Accessibility Committee and then we bring revised reports back to the Council to reflect the input that we received from those committees. And that's what we plan to do.
Okay, perfect. On that basis then, Deputy Mayor Denzel.
That's my motion.
Great. Okay, so this is just in addition to the item as well, so a second part on it. Okay.
Anyway, that's the route. But anyway, I guess people don't understand that. That's
okay. Great. So we'll vote then on the two. So the original motion as well as the second motion from Deputy Mayor Denzelman and Wong. So
all in favor?
Okay, great. So we're voting on Deputy Mayor's first. All those in favor? Voting on the second on the original recommendation. Staff recommendations, and then the item is amended. That item passes. Thank you. That brings us to item 1913. Councillor Fletcher, did you have questions on this as well?
No, I just, I understand. Thank you, Ms. Romoff. I'm sorry we couldn't get that done before noon. That this has been a request a number of times. I think even while we've been waiting, there's been letters come in from people that have heard about this. So there are a lot of people that would like to be able to take their non-motorized craft down to the lake. And if we can look for some places where there's storage, that would be fantastic. And I understand, Madam Chair, you're going to add more than that central area.
Yeah, correct. Is there any questions of the item? Anyone else to speak to the item? Okay, Councillor Leighton.
Just very briefly, I love seeing this item come forward. It was 2015 when Councillor Fletcher and I actually originally discussed trying to build a paddle-friendly city. Now we have a moniker for it, Paddle TO. So all power to Councillor Fletcher and Councillor McKelvey, or Chair McKelvey. If you can help move this forward at all, why not?
Thank you for the branding.
Okay, thank you. So I have a motion, which is Councillor Fletcher's, but just augmenting it by saying across the Toronto waterfront. As Councillor Fletcher said, since she brought this forward, there's been much advocacy across the city, including residents in my community that have latched onto it. We had lots of problems last year trying to launch, especially. And we had a lot of restrictions because of closed parking lots and closures and things like that. But overall, we found that there was a big pickup in paddling, and we certainly need more both storage and launch locations. So we can pull this item up, and I think we can move to a vote on it.
Oh.
Apologies, we are pulling this up.
Good afternoon, Councillor Fletcher.
Good afternoon.
Can we get a sound check, please?
Councillor Fletcher, can you mute? Okay, here is the final motion. We'll move to the vote. All those in favor? Waiting for the screen to change. All those in favor? Opposed? That item carries. Item is amended. All those in favor? All those opposed? That item carries.
Thank you very much, and thank Ms. Romoff. Thanks very much for that.
Thank you. That completes our agenda for today. Happy New Year, everybody. Thank you. Tune again, I think, March. Okay. Yes, March. Thank you. Bye-bye.
See you in the Ides of March, Ides 15, March 15th.
Okay. Be safe out there.
Listen, enjoy the new year, everyone, all right? Good luck.